Session of the Grant County Council. I will call this meeting to order. Tonight, the prayer will be led by Mr. Connor, with the Pledge of Allegiance being led by Mr. Scott. If you would stand.
Everybody should pray with me. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this free country in which we can gather and have meetings and just be able to do the people's business. Lord, we pray that you'll continue to help this world wipe out the terrible plague of COVID, and that you'll help all of us as we try to get through it. Give us wisdom tonight, discernment, and civility as we take on the rest of this agenda, and bless our fellowship. It's in your Son's name that I pray, and for his sake. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. If you would, Mr. McCord, go ahead and do the roll call.
Okay, Mr. Scott.
Here.
Mr. Connor.
Here.
Mr. Rohrbach.
I'm present.
Gotcha. Okay, Mr. Hicks.
Here.
Mr. Poling.
Here.
Mr. Lemon.
Here.
Mr. Middlesworth.
Here. We do have a quorum. Thank you. You should have in front of you and also received electronically the minutes from the regular session of January the 19th, 2022. Are there any corrections that need to be corrected or errors to the minutes? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I would make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
I have a motion from Mr. Lemming, a second from Mr. Hicks to approve the regular session minutes from January the 19th, 2022. As presented. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Abstain.
One abstention. The minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is the auditor's report. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. McCord.
Okay, thank you. I guess in the interest of time, I'm not going to really give you another report. We've got all my stuff I sent you. If you have any questions, we can talk about those, but it's pretty routine as far as what I sent this month, and we're first month into the year, so it's pretty routine at this point. But if you have questions, we're glad to entertain them.
Are there any questions regarding the auditor's report?
Just kind of off the top of my head, Jim, I was talking to Shane about this earlier. The ending balance in the health insurance fund, we have to put X dollars in there, I realize, every year to cover all this stuff. Is there a point where we need to cap that?
To say, is there ever a time? I mean, maybe. My first thought to you is I wouldn't do that at this point.
Well, the reason I ask is I don't want, like if we get audited, is there a point that that's going to be, that fund being too large is a problem?
I've never heard of that being the
Okay.
case. If it is, I've never heard of that.
You know what I'm thinking, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
But at this point, I'm not aware of that being a concern. If that changes and I find out something, I'll let you know. But at this point, I wouldn't be concerned about that.
Well, I just think, we were doing a nice job of that growing. That's just a point there, as I thought maybe we need to reallocate something.
Well, this where you're just a few claims away from something you never know.
I agree. I agree.
You never know. I mean, obviously, we have a stop loss that handles a year total as well. But at this point, I would just say you're doing good. I wouldn't try to change it at this point.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Roy. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. McCord. I would like to note to the members that the HR report is also in your packet. So under new business, item A will be removed. They're still updating some information, and I will go ahead and add that to the March 16th meeting. But at this time, go ahead and we'll remove item A. So under new business, item B, the state of the judiciary, Judge Spitzer, I invite up to fill us in, I guess.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank
sir.
you. Got my assistant who is way overqualified for this job, who's going to be pushing the little clicker for me, Melissa Stephenson. And so as soon as that-
You have any hard copies of that at all?
I don't. I've got one for
I guess
the-
we can't see.
Yeah. Got one for the-
Just visualize it.
Whatever, we'll take a break, I'll just take a break for a while.
We can see it up here, Marcus, if that's.
Yeah, I was trying to get it to where it was full screen for you guys, so we can.
It is full
It
screen.
is full screen.
Yeah, it is now, so.
Okay. All right, you can just click into the next one. Okay, so I think, so this year, it's kind of, and I think we've probably felt this, all of us, but in the pandemic, sort of, every day is a little bit Groundhog Day-ish, and so we've kind of had that with 2021 as opposed to 2020. So some similar challenges, and so a few things I'm going to talk about is unfinished business, and that's where we see a lot of our similarities. So we've got jail overcrowding and the detention center renovation I want to talk about a little bit. Kind of where we're at with the pandemic in the courts. A courthouse condition, from our perspective, I know that's something that's going to be talked about later in the agenda as well. And then so just some data and information about the judicial system, and then also some things that are new for this year. So starting with unfinished business, and you can click it. We're waiting. It's not going, huh?
Is it not going for you?
All right. And then one more, if you could, please. Okay, so here's our average jail population for the last 12 months. And as you may know, 274 is full is the full census for the jail. And so what you'll notice from the graph there is that we've been over 274 for all but 2 of the months over the last 12 months, and we're significantly over at this point. And so the reasons for that are we've again, just about every year we've had a felonies increase significantly. We fell back just a few felonies this year, but since 2015 we've really seen that increase as well. And then on top of that, we've had the pandemic kind of complicating things. So we've had issues with quarantines and contact traces in the jail. We've had pauses in jury trials as well due to the pandemic, and so those things do certainly complicate things. So that's the jail, and related to that is D-home renovation, and our suggestion that that could help take some of the pressure off of the jail. And so, as you'll recall, we started talking to you about that in 2017. We're from our perspective, we believe the situation has worsened because we keep seeing an increase in felonies. We've really exercised all of our creativity to keep down jail numbers, and we've still seen this chronic overcrowding. From our perspective, we felt it was a relatively small investment to add jail capacity. And again, I know that number's moved around a little bit. I can't tell you I quite understand why that number has moved around a little bit, but it has. And so we have a D-home now that's unused at this point, and yet we have a need for it. So we are still recommending that there be a renovation to allow us to both keep the detention center and then expand jail capacity. And I think, as you might know, in 2021, it was in May, I believe, the detention center was closed. Supposedly that was for mold in the HVAC system, and has not reopened. Again, I thought 7 months would be enough time, or well, I guess we're 9 months into it now, to clean mold out of the system, or perhaps the decision is made not to do that. I don't know. We haven't necessarily been made privy to the full extent of that decision. But where we're at now is that the juveniles can't be housed locally, and so law enforcement has to transport them to facilities in other counties. And we do not have a secure juvenile holding facility in the county. And that's significant because if law enforcement picks up a juvenile, they don't have any place that they can hold them for any significant period of time. What that means then is that they have to transport those juveniles to another facility, and that placement in those facilities is subject to the availability. And so what that means is that our staff has to call around to facilities to find some place that's willing to take the child. We've seen sort of continuing problems with the availability of facilities to do that. That takes staff time. Obviously, transporting takes law enforcement time as well. If we look at since last May, our juveniles have been variously held in a number of different facilities: in Kinsey and Kokomo, YOC in Muncie, ACJC in Fort Wayne, Madison County in Anderson, St. Joe County in South Bend, and Johnson County in Franklin. So we got law enforcement transporting them, driving all around northern Indiana to do that. Now, in 2019, the estimate was that the yearly cost would be about a little over $200,000 to house the juveniles in other places. But if we look at from May to December of 2021, the cost was nearly that, the same amount. We've seen an additional a little over $15,000 in January of 22, so we're at $218,000, and so the cost. We had suggested that due to supply and demand that cost was going to escalate, and it has. The other thing you should remember is this is just housing costs, so that's what we pay them to house them. Doesn't count the manpower costs of probation, to call around and make the arrangements for law enforcement to actually transport, sitting with juveniles until we find a place for them. There are system costs, so you have delays in court proceedings, and there are access to justice costs where the kids don't have access to their attorney, their public defender that's been appointed for them. Those are problematic. And there's a public safety issue as well. Deputies or officers are pulled off the road to transport juveniles. It's expensive, there are public safety concerns, and it's a strain on the system. Research and common sense says that sending kids away from home is bad for kids. The other thing is that the school, what we've heard from our schools as well, is that they don't have a place to take kids that are acting out. We don't have a holding facility anymore. The out-of-county placements may not be trustworthy in terms of following through with having the kids doing schoolwork. The other thing is something that you might remember from yourself as a kid when mom or dad said, don't hang around with those kids, right? And their concern was, and maybe you said that to your own kids, I know I have, your concern was that their influence is going to be a negative influence on you or on your kids. And that's what we see, you know, sending, not shocking that you send kids to be with these higher risk kids, which is who are in these facilities, then you create higher risk kids. We're probably making the problem that we have with our juvenile population in Grant County worse. So, we're going to echo the recommendation that we've made over the past years, that we move forward with the option to modify the detention center into a multi-use facility that would house both adults and children. We think that makes the most sense financially. It meets the needs of the kids, most likely to retain the flexibility to address our needs in the future. If we're already seeing limitations on facilities that we can take the kids to now, we talked about previously how the law has changed, so more kids, an additional classification of kids needs to be housed in juvenile rather than adult facilities. This is going to continue to be a problem in the future. Moving on to the pandemic, until we had resumed trials about midway through 2021 and held quite a few trials. Recently we had the spike in Omicron, and so we did pause for a little bit. I was just looking at the numbers today, and we need to get it really into the yellow to safely hold trials, and we seem to be trending there. So I'm hopeful that we could be back doing trials again in March, and so that's the current plan. But you know, obviously, both last year and this year, we continue to have a backlog of jury trials. Other proceedings have resumed in our business as usual. We use remote a little bit more, but other than that, we're doing that. We've been at work every day throughout the course of the pandemic. And we're masking and social distancing. We do have staff impact from quarantining and things like that, but we've been able to kind of work our way through that as well. So when we get back to doing trials again, in terms of prioritizing, those individuals who have speedy trial requests go first, and then incarcerated defendants go second. Older cases go over younger cases, and then criminal cases over civil cases. So unfortunately, civil cases are kind of at the end of the line, but we do need to address the criminal cases and certainly the backlog as well. So in terms of what can change, obviously nobody can predict what's going to happen with the pandemic, and so if things change, we'll be reacting to it and pausing again. And so we'll just kind of see and continue to evaluate as time goes. I wanted to share with you a little bit in terms of, and I know this one's a little bit difficult to read, but just in terms of what our judicial officers are doing in terms of getting involved in the state. And so it's kind of a listing of committees and things that the judicial officers are on. And the next slide is going to tell you why we do that, so we can move on to the next slide. And so it's a listing of all the grants that we have been awarded. So just close to $2 million in grants that we've gotten from 15 different sources. Again, just like previous years, we don't have professional grant writers or anything that help us out with that. We do that in-house. And so it's a lot of work for staff, but we do, we do feel that it's important for us. We want to do sort of innovative things and support, take pressure off of the general fund. So $2 million certainly can do that. A similar amount last year as well, and so we've been pretty consistent at doing that. In terms of, if we look at kind of how 21 played out, our total case filings were up about 4% from 2020, so a little more work, but that was combined with the backlog of cases from the pandemic from 2022, so that we're all pretty busy. If we look at the felony cases that were filed, you can see kind of what I was talking about in terms of that spike from 2015. And you can see we had a few less felonies in 21 than we did in 20, but it still was over, it exceeded all the years back since I've collected info from 2002. So we had 1,125 felony cases that were filed last year. And 841 of those felonies were level 6 felonies, that's significant. It's about 75%. We've been pretty consistent with our felonies being the level 6s are about 75%. The reason that's important is that you can't send those people to the Department of Corrections. You have to deal with them in some way in Grant County, and that can be probation, that can be incarceration, that can be through community corrections supervision. So if you look at 2015, we sent 214 offenders to IDOC. In 2021, we sent 50 offenders to IDOC. So there's that effect of more people being supervised. We're dealing with them locally rather than sending them away to DOC. Those were the intentions of criminal justice reform when the General Assembly passed that in 2014, and we've seen that happen in Grant County. If you look at, in terms of the common felonies, we're really looking at drug charges or drug-related property crimes, and substance dependency and mental health continue to be big drivers of criminal activity in Grant County. Obviously, we know about how felonies take time and use county resources as well, and so when you have increasing felonies or felonies at a high level, you know, that just kind of puts pressure on the system. The courthouse, I'm going to argue that the courthouse needs a facelift. I invite y'all to come over and walk through it. You know, obviously everybody's tastes are different, but I'm a little embarrassed when I walk in the front door. And when people come in and see our courthouse. And I think we could do better. We had the renovation, I don't know if it's been, I think 10 years ago maybe. And really nothing has been done since then. You know, at least an interior paint job, new carpet, updated entryway are things that we suggest could make things look a little bit better. Elevator continues to be a problem, breaks down quite a bit, and that's difficult because we have elderly people or people that have mobility limitations, and so we have to deal with that. Heating and cooling. Within the last 10 days, my courtroom has been both 83 degrees and 63 degrees, and all of the numbers in between. You know, I don't know what's going on with that, but we often things are very hot or very cool in the workspaces and in the courtrooms. Again, we're dealing with it. You know, when you're in a polyester black dress for a long period of time, it gets pretty warm when it's 83 degrees in the courtroom. So we had the water leak that occurred in December, and there were a lot of damage in the Superior Court 2 area, in the public defender room, as well as in my office, and that has not been fixed yet. And then obviously you know about the water infiltration problem at the ground level. It's a topic of discussion later on and that's been a problem for years. Okay. Some more fun things at this point, I guess. So probation and community corrections used to be called correctional services, and we've changed that to be Grant County Court Services. More descriptive, I think, and is similar to what a lot of other counties have done as well. So as we do departmental budget listing, I know it was good in the agenda today as well. So just referring to it as support services for the future, that'd be great. We were the first certified pretrial program in the state of Indiana. In 2021, we got that 3-year certification. So we were pretty proud about that. We had kind of been leaders in the pretrial services arena, and so it was important to us to be the first one that was certified, and so we were really happy to do that. And so there's a lot of other people that are following our lead now in Grant County. I'm sorry, in Indiana. I talked a little bit last year about House Enrolled Act 1068, which was at that point had not been effective, but this was the local JRAC statute. And what that did is that it created an interdisciplinary local council of stakeholders in every county in Indiana. And there is council and commissioner representation on it by statute. And the thinking on that is that we should be sharing, we should be collaborating as we consider changes in the system. We get together and talk about it, and that avoids sort of unintended consequences. What we're seeing is the General Assembly is going to be sort of pushing funding towards this local JRAC, and then also decision making towards this local JRAC concept. And so there's a state level JRAC, Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council, as well. I do serve on the state level Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council. The move is really sort of to use these groups of interdisciplinary bodies to make decisions with regards to criminal justice, and then also to funnel funding to them as well. So it's important for us to have our local JRAC up and going, to have everybody participating in it. We've got some important meetings on March 1st and 22nd, I believe, of our local JRAC. So we encourage all of our stakeholders to be present at those, we appreciate the cooperation that we have amongst the local stakeholders when we make these important decisions. All right. Justice Stephen David, who is Justice of the Indiana Supreme Court, is going to be retiring at the end of 2022. As you might know, he's one of 5 justices on the state's highest court, and so there was a solicitation for applications in January, and there are 19 applicants, and myself and Judge Kenworthy are 2 of those applicants, so I wanted to share that with you as well. I've got my first interview on February 28th, and Judge Kenworthy has hers on March 1st. The procedure is a couple of rounds of interviews with the Judicial Nominating Commission to narrow the field to 3, and then give it to the governor, and the governor makes a decision on that. So we'll keep you posted in terms of what happens there. Judge Kenworthy and I are still engaged and will remain engaged. We like our jobs here, and so if we're not fortunate enough to get that, we're certainly okay with continuing all the work that we're doing here as well. But we did want to share that with you. What we hope is that we can maybe enhance Grant County's history. I don't know if you knew this, but Grant County's been the home of both an Indiana Supreme Court Justice and a Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. So Justice Willis Vandevanter was the Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, was born in Marion, practiced here, and served on the Supreme Court of the United States from 1910 to 1937. And then Justice Willard Gimmel was born in Rigdon and practiced in Marion. Served on the Supreme Court from 1925 to 1931, the Indiana Supreme Court. And then after serving on that court, he came back to practice in Marion and practiced at the firm that Mike Connor and Phil Stephenson still practice at today. So kind of a cool history of Grant County with regards to the Supreme Court. So we'll see if that gets enhanced in the future. The other thing I should say is that certainly Judge Kenworthy and I are not in competition. We're not just colleagues, but we're friends as well. And so no need to worry about there being any type of competition between the two of us. I did offer to deliver her application, and she didn't take me up on that. So. Oops. Yep. So any questions?
have one. So
Yeah.
Indiana's reclassification of misdemeanors and felonies took place when, 2014?
14.
So a lot of the misdemeanors that would have been considered misdemeanors under the old law are now considered level 6 felonies.
Other way around, actually. Yeah, so a lot of things that were Class D felonies under the old law are now A misdemeanors.
Now
Yes,
misdemeanors.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, generally, with what happened in 2014 is there was a decrease in penalties and classifications, kind of across the board at that point. So.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Ready to move on? The next item under new business, item C, Grant County, a new name, what is it? Grant County Court Services, Melissa Stephenson. Changes in funding, the pretrial grant fund. Good evening.
Good evening. So if you remember back in December, I brought up the pretrial grant award, and we had not received it yet. And so we were going based on what we anticipated, and as the letter indicates, it changed a little bit in terms of how they funded and restructured the funding of that. And we were given notification from the Indiana Office of Court Services that the grant request for the current funding cycle had to be reprioritized, basically because of the demand. All of the requests exceeded the amount of money they had available. And what they did was they preserved existing staff salaries, and in doing that, they put a 30% cap of those salaries. They calculated the fringe benefits at 30% of those salaries. And so it created a deficit in our funding specifically at about $52,865. And that's to cover the benefits that we've historically been awarded in previous years for the 3 probation officers that are currently being paid out of the pretrial grant. So after we did some consulting with Angie and Jim and Justin, the benefits are generally appropriated in the commissioner's budget appropriation. The commissioner's budgeted appropriation for the benefits is what's paid out of the general fund, and it has enough money to cover the reductions in the funding for the benefits. So I presented this information to the commissioners during their meeting February 7th. So they're aware of that deficit as well.
So the request is for the general fund there's enough appropriations to handle this if this body wishes to take action. But what's the amount?
$52,865.
Is there any questions? I guess there's no questions. I just make a comment that obviously over the years the county has received a lot of money in grants, and it's a tendency that once the grants runs out that the county just continues to fund those items. But at a point, sometimes maybe those items shouldn't be funded. But in this case of this, it is relieving pressure off the jail and other areas, I'm sure. And so I think that the $52,865 is reasonable. If there's no other questions, I'd entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the request.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Connor, a second from Mr. Scott to approve an additional appropriation or a transfer.
It's just, you're gonna incorporate her staffing needs for fringe benefits into the general fund we currently have. There's no change. You're allowing that level of service to continue, knowing that you're gonna pay somebody out of the general fund. There's really no transfer or additional needed at this point.
Okay, we're just okaying the concept of,
You're saying, fine, continue as you are, and we'll use general fund dollars to fund that.
okay, and the $52,865. Any other questions or comments?
Is this mostly out of salary then, that you're getting the grant for?
So, the way that, yeah, so we always use that to pay, to request for the salary and benefits. There was a small amount that we received this year, a reduced amount to help pay for the public defenders. And then they took out our training budget, but this primarily covers the positions.
So why don't you just adjust what you're paying as to raise the amount? I mean, why don't you just adjust the grant? You've got the unfortunately, you didn't get as much in grants. Why don't you just adjust what your services are? You need the extra dollars to continue with the number of services.
Yeah, so this three position, it takes all three positions to make pretrial run.
Any other questions?
And part of the way that they funded that too was, even if we reduced positions, we still have the 30% cap on each position, so it's still going to be a request. So they've capped those benefits at 30% per person.
Any other questions from the members? Public input? Roll call, please.
Mr. Scott,
Aye.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Rohrbach,
Aye.
Mr. Hicks,
Yes.
Mr. Poling,
Yes.
Mr. Lemon,
I have to say no.
Mr. Middlesworth.
No.
Okay, 5-2 in favor.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item under new business, County Recorder Kathy Foy with an additional appropriation within the Recorder's Perpetuation Fund.
Hello. I need the additional appropriations to my service agreement account in the amount of $60,000 to do phase 2 of our 80s back indexing project.
So the request is for an additional appropriation within the Recorder's Perpetuation Fund in the amount of $60,000. Is there any other questions or comments?
Remind me, is this out of perpetuation?
Yes, sir.
If there's no questions or comments, I entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the request as presented.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Connor, a second from Mr. Scott to approve an additional appropriation within the Recorder's Perpetuation Fund in the amount of $60,000. And it's a fee-driven fund. And just so the public knows, it's not general fund dollars. This fund would be fees that are generated from the software they use for recording to.
And the money we take in for recording documents and people using our software to search.
Any other questions or comments from the members? Public input? Roll call, please.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Rohrbach.
Aye.
Mr. Hicks.
Yes.
Mr. Poling.
Yes.
Mr. Lemon.
Yes.
Mr. Middlesworth.
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item under new business, item E, County Prosecutor Rodney Faulk with an additional appropriation, general fund.
Good evening. You may remember last year I came to you with a request to purchase 2 vehicles from Barry Buffer at $21,999 per vehicle for prosecutor investigators. Happy that you approved that. They weren't able to get the vehicles because of problems nationwide with parts. And so I'm back again, just asking that be renewed for this year in the event that they're delivered and we're able to purchase them.
So we granted approval last year for Rodney's to purchase the 2 vehicles. We'll be paying one out of general fund and one out of CCD, but the one we'll just go ahead and take action on right now would be the general fund, which would be additional appropriation for the $21,999.
Actually, 22,000. Put 22,000. That's what we advertised. That gives you that penalty. Yeah, make it 22,000. That's what we did back in August.
Okay, 22,000. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move to approve additional appropriation in the county general fund for the purchase of a vehicle for the prosecutor's office in the amount of $22,000.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Scott, a second from Mr. Lemmy to approve within the general fund an additional appropriation in the amount of $22,000 to purchase a vehicle for the prosecutor's investigators. Any other questions or comments? Public input? Roll call, please.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Rohrbach.
Aye.
Mr. Hicks.
Yes.
Mr. Poling.
Yes.
Mr. Lemon.
Yes.
And Mr. Middlesworth.
Yes. And the other car, Rodney's, will be out on the commissioner's item under the CCD, the other car. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item under new business, item F, County Sheriff Reggie Nevels, food service contract, transfer of appropriation. I believe he's online this evening.
That is correct. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On the 7th of this month, I'm here in front of the commissioners meeting to get their blessing regarding to this contract agreement with Tiger Food Service. Tiger, they also take care of our commissary for us, and we have built a partnership with them for 7 years since we have taken office, and we are very, very happy with their services. So since they went into the food services and with the issues that we were having with our current food staff, we decided to explore the avenue to hire them to run our kitchen. As you know, we have the largest cafeteria in Grant County. You know, if you have 300 inmates, you're serving 3 meals a day. You can do the math and tell how many meals we serve each day and each week with the jail population. However, my staff and I, we decided to go into agreement with Tiger because there's several things here, and to start off by saying it would save Grant County close to $73,000 a year. Now, this contract consists of a 3-year agreement. So with that being said, we will save close to $217,000 during that 3 years period. Now, we have five cooks down there in the kitchen. We brought 2 from the detention center when it closed, and we currently have 3. But then we found out after one decided to retire, Then it took a domino effect, and then we had 3 others decide to resign. So that left us with 1 cook, and so there was no way we can continue serving the meals that we had with the population of 300. So that's why we went this way. And after we explained to the commissioners that it was a win-win for not only the county, because we will eliminate 5 employees from our budget. And not only that 5 employees, that also consists of the benefit package, which we all know what that consists of. So once again, it's a big saving for Grant County, and I just want to get you, the council blessing also for us to make this thing happen. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
So Sheriff, the request is to transfer, do you have a dollar amount?
Yes, our current budget for our meal was $560,000. So we like to, with the council permission, we kind of talked to Angie, and I think it'd be best to put it into a contractual account so that our bookkeeper will be responsible for paying Tiger, so that'll take any, burden off the audit department or whatever, and we can just pay this vendor out just like we do with our medical contract that we have.
Sheriff, let me ask this, Angie, the amount we have in that, is that an amount correct now? You said 500 and some thousand?
The $646,499 is what was given to me by 10 this morning. That was the basic cost that they thought.
Yeah, I guess from what Angie was saying, Sheriff, that that meals account on its own would not have enough to be transferred into that new contractual account to cover the costs that Tim was telling Angie that it would entail. So I think it's probably gonna be a combination of transferring some money from that meal account, which is already in a contractual services area, but into a new contractual services account, and also some salary numbers as well. So my thought is, if the number that Tim gave Angie is correct as far as the projected cost for a year, it's gonna take a combination of some salary and that meal appropriations transfer.
Yes, that is correct if it goes over that amount. And like I said, we cannot predict the jail population, and their agreement was based on the number of inmates that we serve or that we have incarcerated. And so once again, as we all know, the history of the Grant County Sheriff's Department under this administration has always returned money back to the council or to the general fund. We plan on doing the same thing this year.
I guess what I might suggest, if the council wants to approve this concept, which I'm assuming they will, but my thought is, why don't you just give us permission to transfer whatever balance is remaining in the meals account now in the sheriff's budget, the general fund. We'll just transfer that balance to this new account we'll establish for this services contract.
Yes, sir, I agree with you. That's the best way to do it.
If you need something later, then we would move something out of some of the personnel line items to that to accommodate that.
That is correct. I have no problem with that, Mr. McWhirter.
Any questions from the members? The request would be to transfer from meals to the remaining balance of meals to a contractual service account within the Sheriff's Department's budget.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Connor, a second from Mr. Poling to transfer from meals the remaining balance to a contractual service line item to pay Tiger food services for meals for the jail. Any other questions or comments?
And just know that if we need more, and later on, we'll come back as far as source, the salary accounts for it.
Public input? Roll call, please.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Rohrbach.
Aye.
Mr. Hicks. Yes. Mr. Poling.
Yes.
Mr. Lemon.
Aye.
And Mr. Middlesworth.
Yes. Motion carries. Sheriff, if you would, could you forward the contract to me as well?
Oh, yes, sir. We make sure you receive it tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you.
And thanks again, council member. Really appreciate it. As I stated earlier, it's a win-win for Grant County because we saving taxpayer money.
We appreciate that, Sheriff.
Sheriff, has the contract been finalized? I know you were still working on a couple of points. Has it been finalized now?
Yes, sir. It's been finalized. Our county attorney has looked at it, and we all signed off on it, the commissioners, et cetera. And we just want to inform the council to get your blessings so that we can get things underway. We are looking at targeting this or start this relationship on March the 7th.
That's a good point for us to know too, March 7th, because there may be some other mill account costs that we'll have before we transfer that. So.
Yes, sir. So thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
It's always good to have a win-win for everyone, and hopefully it works out for their department. Next item under new business, item G, County Highway David White, additional appropriation within the motor vehicle highway fund, additional appropriation within the NVH restricted fund, and then possibly a salary ordinance amendment.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I'd like to present tonight. I'd like to ask for positions to get an increase, and what I separated out was basically $138,133 difference. $100,595 would come out of the NVH general fund. If you remember, that pays for our taxes and retirement and everything else out of that. That's why it's a little bit higher. And then the restricted is $37,538. We use that through the months of April 1st, October 1st, for a maintenance program for paving, chip sealing, bridge repair, and etc. That's why we're going to take that additional money out of there. I've kind of listed a few things that maybe I feel like is important. You know, we've worked really hard on trying to make sure that we save as much money as we can. For example, I put in there we saved almost $400,000 in 2021 for Grant County. The 3 tower projects, I think the quote on doing the foundation work was $190,000. If I remember right on that, we did all 3 of them. And basically, I think the only cost to the commissioners was a stone, which I think was $5,000. So we saved a lot of money there. I think with the area plan, we've done almost 14 projects since last year. Some of them pretty substantial in size and everything else, and basically all they had to pay for was the dumpsters, the removal of the material. Everything else was pretty much taken care of by the highway with equipment, dump trucks, etc. So that's why I kind of put that in there. In the last, since basically 2016, I think we've acquired almost close to $10 million in grants through the state, federal government. A lot of the grants are 50% match, or the federal government is 80-20, where we only have to pay 20%. So we've saved the taxpayers a lot of money on trying to make sure we get projects done and stuff like that. On the next page, I've kind of showed what other counties pay their employees, and try to show you the difference of how much lower we are than most counties, smaller counties, and vice versa, counties that are same quality and size as we are. We're really a lot less on most truck drivers, equipment operators, almost $2 an hour on most other counties compared to us. So the other part of the budget on the next page, I've kind of showed what I'd like to give the employees. I know you gentlemen gave us all a 4% increase this year, and we greatly appreciate that. But I'll be honest with you, I've already lost 2 employees already this year. I think I lost 6 last year total. 2 of the 6 last year went to smaller communities in Grant County for more pay, better benefits, etc. And it's just, I'll be honest with you, it's like I've said in the past, if you lose an employee, you've almost got 5 years to get that employee back up to the other employees, whether it's plowing snow, hauling mix, or anything else. CDL, getting their CDL license, everything else. So, you know, I think it's something that is a major problem, and I really don't want to keep kicking the can down the road that we lose good and quality employees every time we turn around. And, you know, basically, a lot of it has to do with the CDL license. They're basically gold. I mean, if you got them and you don't have a traffic ticket or an accident, you can make good money with the CDLs. And so that's why a lot of people are leaving, because they can go get a $5,000 sign-on bonus and before they even walk in the door at a lot of locations. So just trying to keep good quality employees at the highway department. That's my main concern, and that's why I feel like if we get them up to where their wages are competitive to other counties, or even just to make sure that they stay, that's what my goal is.
Go ahead and open it for questions to the members.
So the project that you are working on, how much time is that taking away from your normal work duties and responsibilities?
Working with the area plan has been really nice. We try to do those projects in the winter, like etc. We've done some this fall when maybe our paving projects have stopped for the year. We work at least most projects 2 to 3 days on a smaller structure. A lot depends on the dumpster company, and I know in the past we talked about buying our own dumpster, so maybe we can save some money and do it our own a little faster. And actually, I've even got to an auction. I'm going to try to do it March 1st on that. So usually most projects less than a week. So I mean, you know, and we work with the area plan real well. If we've got something going on, we just explain we got to do that first, and then we'll come and help them.
But the tearing down of the buildings, you're not doing just in the winter time. You're doing those throughout the year.
Well, we were done them a little bit more in the summer this year because we was trying to help them get caught up because they were so far behind on a lot of projects. So maybe we spent a little more time helping them out, but we also got all of our road projects done. So it's worked out. We've done some big ones in Jonesboro and some big projects that we're getting ready to do a big one in Upland on Main Street starting next week. So we've been doing really good on getting those done. And like they understand, if it snows, we can't take all of our guys and go do that when we've got snow removal and stuff like that. So, and like I said, the tower projects, basically we dug 3 holes, 20 foot deep, 45 feet wide, 45 feet wide. And then the company come in and put the foundation, the footers all in, and then we backfilled all that and cleared the sites and everything else. So that saves the commissioners quite a bit of money on those 3 tower projects.
Well, it's a great utilization for the county as far as using that workforce. You're requesting almost a 9% raise when we're in February of the new year. And I think it's interesting that you put on here that we have no wheel tax, which we've kicked around at least 2 years in a row.
Yes.
Which we talked about discussing moving tax dollars so it would go to the right spots. In the savings that you, I'm not arguing that point, the savings that you put out there, I just wonder if it's, I'm just throwing this out there, does it make sense to give your department a bonus on the savings versus give you everyone an hourly wage increase of 9% in February of a new year after we just went through a budget process? I mean, I don't know. I just think this is going to be a hard argument. I'm not saying they don't deserve it, okay? I'm just saying that 9% after giving a 4 or 5 or 6% raise, now you're looking at a 15% raise in what, 3 months. And I know what you're going to argue. I get it. I get it.
I was going to say, I guess my thing is I see down the road, I would say in the next 10 years, that the ones that have got close to retirement, you're gonna lose those 10, you know, those people there because of retirement.
Sure.
But then over half of my staff has less than 8 years of service. And I'm telling you right now that if they don't get money to keep them on an hourly rate, they're gonna leave. I guarantee you that.
But David, I'm just questioning, a 9% raise only puts you at 1850. And in comparison to what you're giving me, we're still not beating Blackwood. We're not beating Huntington. We're barely beating Howard. What is that really? I'm just saying, is that really worth it? Are you telling me $1.67 an hour is going to be enough to keep the people you're talking about when you're going to be in the same boat 6 months from now?
Well, I understand that, but I gotta do something to get started on the right direction. You know, that's my thing is, we gotta get something to start towards getting them the pay to keep them, or you're gonna be right down the road again of losing half a dozen people every year.
And I understand that too, and I know that 3 people here know a lot more about CDLs than I do. And I get where we're headed. I'm just wondering if, my personal opinion is at this meeting, and I appreciate the people that did come, is this something that we should kick around a little bit differently to approach versus come in and give out a 9 or 10% raise and the rest of the people in the county freak out? I'm just saying there's other ways we can do something to get us to where we need to be.
I don't know, I'm just saying is, I just know that, I'm talking the highway, like I said before, I don't know the other departments, how their operations ran or anything like that, but I just know that.
And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to throw this out here in a general meeting to say, look, you're helping the commissioners, you're helping 911 dispatch, you're helping the area plan. Is there a way that those places already have, we've got quotes and we're using our people, is there a way to send them some money versus, in general terms, raise their wage by $2 an hour? And maybe I'm way out of whack. I'm just saying, isn't that more of a business thing where we're using our people wisely, but we're making our people that's also having these things go through, area plan, for instance, because they're going to try to recoup some of that money. That's what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I don't know what that.
I'm just trying to be what is the most efficient, but yet keep things moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and that's my main concern is, like I said, is I don't want to, in 5 years now, have to be dealing with losing good employees. Like I said, is, you know, you get somebody trained to get their CDL license. I mean, in the last 5 or 6 years, I basically hired 90% of my staff off the street that's never drove a dump truck or anything like that before, just trying to get somebody to come in and get a job, you know, I mean, that will get their CDL license and everything else. I mean, it's just not, you walk in and say, yeah, I want my CDL license, start driving tomorrow. You know, I wish it was that easy.
Right, I know, yeah.
But, I mean, that's the big problem is, and then when they do get their CDL license, you know, like I said, I just come down the interstate tonight, I seen Dollar General, $5,000 sign-on bonus for CDL license. You know, they can turn right there at 1869, go in there and say, hey, give me $5,000.
Which is a few miles from where you're at.
Yeah, but, you know, I mean, that's the thing is, I just think we're gonna keep kicking that can down the road that you're just gonna keep losing good employees.
I'm just one guy.
Yeah,
I'm just throwing things out there.
I'm just trying to make sure that you guys, I mean, yeah, and I understand, we're not even close to what Blackford County makes.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I just talked to the gentleman today, they got a 10% increase this year, at one time, beginning this year, their budget. But, you know, that's the thing is, you know, they're a county a third of the size of Grant County. I mean, you know, it's just, I'm like you, I could go on and on about what.
Is there a way to incentivize it differently? I mean, like if you threw in, again, I'm spitballing here, through incentivizing like 90 days, you get X dollars on top of it once we've got you hired, and then your people at longevity, is there a way to incentivize that so that just asking, so that we're not, I just think that you're gonna have a hard sell with the guys up here to say, hey, we're 2 months in, we need a 10% raise. I do not disagree that you need a raise, that you're not competitive. Frank knows a lot more about that to me, but to try to get you to $25 an hour. I get it, but we gotta, I think on our standpoint, we gotta work our way up in some other situation to get to that point so that September comes around and we stamp the budget, it makes more sense to us. I mean, that's my opinion.
Yeah,
From
but
one
you're
person.
you're gonna run into this for a long time,
That's what I'm afraid of.
because you gotta realize, no matter what, the corporations is making $15 an hour.
Right.
So all these corporations can pay way more. Okay, and you can't fault a guy for bettering himself.
Nope.
But you're looking at $2 an hour, and they save you a lot of money. And that would make the employees feel safer, I'd say, by giving them $2 an hour. I mean, even I'd raise my guys up way more than $2 an hour. And you're gonna run into that. That's what I'm saying. It's gonna keep going, because you won't be able to compete. And if you lose the people that have the knowledge, you might as well not have nobody out there.
Right.
Well, I think the law's changed here February 7th on getting the CDL. It's a lot harder now, and it's running close to $4,000 just to get a driver's license. Yeah. And where before it was only $200-300.
Is that why they're offering the big signing bonuses?
Yeah, because they're gonna have to go train people, and it's $4,000, so they'll just take other employees, so
I mean,
it's just something we're gonna have to do.
I've heard of something as high as $8,000.
Well, yeah, it depends on the school, but I think for Class B that he has to have, I think it's around 4. Class A with hazmat, yeah, you're talking 8, maybe even 10,000. But you get a hazmat on a license, and it gets expensive, because they gotta go off-site. I think Fort Wayne's where they have to be fingerprinted, and they go through a lot of testing. It's to keep it on there. I know I used to have hazmat on mine.
I still do.
I don't have to have it anymore, so I dropped it. It's just a
something
hassle.
else for you, Mark, is, at budget time, I did ask for more than 4%, because what I was trying to do was do it gradually, like every
Okay.
year or two. And one thought I thought about trying to do too, and I could probably, this would probably be more than commissioners, was if I did hire somebody, I would like to leave them at a lower rate for 90 days or something like that. One, to make sure, right now our current rule is they have to have their CDLs within 45 days. The reason we do that, if they don't get it for maybe a certain reason, our health insurance don't kick in. So we kind of, if they don't have it in 45 days, we're probably gonna let them go because of that.
So you figured out a way with your letter to make this pay adjustment? Is that what I'm reading?
Yes. Basically, the $138,133 will cover the increase, is what I'm saying. And part of it will come out of MBH regular fund, and the other half will come out of restricted.
There's no question about it. The climate to attract, employees is tough, no matter, what employment or, occupation you're seeking. And we do appreciate the dedication of those, current employees you do have that have stayed on. And we do, this body and the commissioners as well, appreciate those cost savings that, you've taken on. And we, humbly thank you for that. And I guess when I
I'll have
go,
to say this to the gentlemen, for the people that do this job, they work for Grant County, so it don't matter if they're doing a job over here or up here removing snow, or, we're here to work for the county. We're not, we're here to help out. I mean, and, I don't feel like I don't want to say that we're asking above what they deserve, you know what I'm saying? I don't want you to think that. I mean, if I say we're gonna start at 5 o'clock in the morning, I guarantee you, every one of them will be there at 5 o'clock in the morning, start plowing snow. But, it's just like that. You go back, I've got 3 new guys this year that I ain't too crazy starting in the dark at 5 o'clock in the morning, they've never plowed a foot of snow, and it's just like that. You kind of fall back on, you lost all your experience, whether they went to a different job or retired or anything like that. So it's frustrating, to be honest with you, because like I said, you want to start and get the roads cleared before everybody goes to school, to work, and you got 3 or 4 brand new guys that have to plow from here to this wall, and I really don't want to send them out in a $180,000 truck and drive it off a cliff, you know, so, and their safety of getting hurt and everything else, so, you know, a lot of them just had their CDLs less than a year, so it's really.
Yeah, I appreciate the attitude as well, that, you know, we're all should work together more, and I'd like to see more collaboration among, you know, some of the other departments as well. But if I recall, going back to the budget process, you asked for the 4%, and we had a telephone conversation prior to that budget being passed, and I said, you know, Dave, could you, I think it was the way that it was advertised, I said, could you rearrange some of your budget structure to allow, you know, the county, I think we gave 5%, and the sheriff's department got 6%. And at that time, you said, you know, you didn't want to change what you'd already requested, the 4%. So the comment that you said, you know, you asked for more, I think if we go back and look, I think you asked for the 4%. But in my opinion, I think, you know, do you open, obviously MVH funds and the funding structures is different than the general fund for the highway department. I mean, we understand that. But when you start talking, you know, what, 10% or 9% or whatever the numbers are, it questions my mind. You know, at that point, do you go back and look at, you know, some other county offices as well? I think the 2% raise would be fine to get you the same as the sheriff's department. And I know that's not what you're looking for or what you're asking for, but I guess I think convincing everybody that the bill was going to be a tough sell. But
Well, I guess I look back too, as every year I've asked for an increase for probably 10 years at budget time, you know, and a lot of times you'll say, well, we can't give it to the other departments, so we're not giving it to the highway. I tried to request it then to try to get a raise, and, you know, and you'd say, well, the MVH fund don't really have to deal with the general. Yeah, I know that, but you know, you didn't want to do it because you couldn't do it to the general, which I understand. That's, you know, stuff you guys got to deal with. But every year I've tried to increase that gradually so that we didn't have to do this where we come down and say, yeah, we need 10, 12% to get even close to other counties or the position or job or whatever you want to say. So it's not that I haven't asked every year, because I have, but a lot of years, I know there was probably 4 or 5 years we went without nothing, you know, and it's like Chuck said, you know, there's you can go work at McDonald's and make $15 an hour. You're telling me my guys are only worth $1.80 more and they got CDLs and everything else?
I think you would have had to have lived in a cave the last year or two not to know that there's a critical shortage of truck drivers. And the problem is, this is a nightmare situation for us. Private employers can just raise prices. Well, contrary to popular belief, government doesn't have a printing press. At least county government doesn't, and we can't keep printing the money. And it does bother me that this wasn't accounted for in the budget process. But I also understand, I've been here long enough, David, I know you've continually asked. And I know you're pounding sand down a rat hole, and it's getting worse and worse, and you're getting a younger and younger in the sense of experience workforce. I also understand the point that we are not going to beat the surrounding counties. But I do think every dollar you can tick up in the salary of these folks makes it slightly less likely that they're going to leave. Because it's still people leaving a job they know, people they like, maybe having to move out of county. $5,000 signing bonus goes quick. You know, ask some of the Marion police officers who took the buyout years ago on the retirement, and boats got purchased and things like that, and it's gone. So there's no way we can compete with every surrounding county. There's no way we can compete with private employers. But I do see what you're saying, David. You have been here and you have to keep asking for these increases. I understand that. And I just hope you and your employees understand what a horrible position we're in. Because asking for a raise mid-budget year is very hard for us to grant. Because it opens the floodgates, because every single county employee is valuable and can make some of the same arguments that the McDonald's argument, I wish I had $1 for every time I've heard that. I can go to McDonald's and get paid more or about the same or what have you. You know, this is what happens when you have a climate of paying people to stay home and you pay them more than they would make working. You get this kind of backlash, and we're seeing it now. I've always been supportive of you and trying to help you get your salaries up. I remember that you gave up your own salary at points to try to help us. I'm an elephant, I got a long memory. And it may, you know, there are just some jobs we've got to bite the bullet and use some discernment and say these are critical, and not just every job's critical like we've heard, but there are certain jobs that are absolutely critical in this county. We can't afford to have too few police officers because you will have people killed in the streets. Nobody argues with that. But I do think that your employees are in a very critical category, a critical need for us, because all of us in this room are the first people to gripe if our roads don't get plowed. And yet, you know, we get put in this position and it's, you know, you want to say, I'm not in the middle of the budget year. You know, see us next year. I do think we need to do something for you all. That's kind of the bottom line.
You gotta remember, his employees are normally Monday through Friday employees, and they're out there on weekends when we get snow. Or trees down across the road. Yeah, it gets dangerous. I know a lot of times when we're on school bus, it's nothing that we have to turn around or back down the road a half a mile because we got a tree across the road with a busload of kids. So, and you go losing them, he loses any employees, you might as well plan on taking care of your own road. That's what it's gonna boil down to. Because you can't afford to give people with CDLs. So you're better off giving the ones you got here now a raise and be done with it. It's not county money, it's state money from gas tax. What's gonna get scary is when we have electric cars, how are they gonna tax that to afford them? They're gonna run down the same roads, same loads are gonna be moved.
That's why I put that little wheel tax in there. Because
we need to triple the charge on electric vehicles.
Just kind of remind you that, you know.
We talked about that.
Yeah, you know, GM is planning in what, 2030 to be all electric, and like you said, fuel tax money comes from that, so just a kind of a, hey, don't forget.
The wheel tax has to be spent all on roads.
Right, yeah, it can't be spent on wages or anything like that. Yeah, it has to be all spent on asphalt, bridges, anything.
I just know, I don't want to see us continue to be the training school for everybody else that's getting our employees, because that's what's happening.
Yeah.
You're, like you said, the 5 years it takes you to get somebody up to full speed. If they leave, we paid for that, all that experience in schooling, and now they're gone, and somebody else gets the benefit of that.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we lose. Ultimately, I think we're dollars behind because that happens.
I don't know how long it'd take to get a CDL now.
Actually, my department has already registered to be a certified training facility. We did do that, so we won't have to spend $4,000 to $8,000. So myself and one of my employees, Dale Beck, has been certified to use our facility as a training center. So hopefully that'll hold for a while. You know how the federal government is, they might change the rule next week, but right now we're pretty much okay. Effective February 7th is when the new ruling came in. So like basically what Frank said is basically February 7th of 2022, you cannot take an employee to a training center without your facility being certified by the state. And so basically, you're gonna have to go to a training school for 4 to 6 weeks. And I really don't know how you do that, because if you don't have nothing saying that you're gonna spend $4,000 or $5,000 on an employee, and I don't know how you're gonna keep them there, and then you're gonna have to pay them while they're going there. So that's
And once
another.
they get their CDL, who knows where they're gonna go?
Yeah. So, but hopefully we got that taken care of for this year, so.
So this $138,133, what percent rate is that?
I believe on most of them, it's 10 to 12%. I kind of just based that off of the flat rate that I put on the page back that has what I proposed to give the employees on budgeted for 2022.
Mark, were you saying earlier that when you were talking about the other departments is taking advantage of using the highway department and their services?
Well,
Are you thinking like a reimbursement, like area plan, there needs to be a line item in there that gives so many dollars to pay for?
I don't know how difficult that is for the offices, but yeah, I think that if we're gonna, I mean, we're using more and more of the county department to help us out, which I think makes sense. We're using our own people, which we're already paying for them. I'm just saying, are we cheating? Is the area plan, or some of the other offices like the commissioners, are we getting, is that group getting cheated because we're not somehow paying?
I'd be honest with you, it don't really bother me, because the way I look at it is they're already getting paid, and if I do that, I'm going to take money out of the general fund to pay for those services, and I'm already paying them anyway. So see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's good.
I'm already paying them out of the MVH fund.
I think Mr. Barsley wants to say something. I don't know if he's on mute or not. He's got his hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Barsley.
Just for information purposes, when area plan gets a demolition directive, that's a court-ordered thing, and it's the commissioners that are supposed to pay for that. We have a fund that area plan uses, but at the same time, we have had to go through and actually do bids, get the contractor cost, and by utilizing our own people and our own machinery, we've been able to reduce that cost. So it's affecting the general budget one way or another. But the idea was to collaborate more, to utilize our men when possible, our employees, instead of having to contract it out and cost us more.
Right.
Thank you, Mr.
Well,
Barsley.
You know, I know job that we bid on 7 houses, you're looking at almost $100,000 to tear them down and haul them out, that dirt back in. So, you know, they're saving you astronomical money by tearing them houses down.
I think the biggest project we had, we only used like 10 dumpsters, and that was one in Jonesboro. Yeah.
Are they saving us as in county government those dollars, or are they saving whatever government entity they're working on behalf of?
Well, like Mark said, that money, all
Well,
they have
actually
to
saving.
all they have to do is pay for the dumpsters to get rid of the product. The rest of it, we don't charge them for that.
I would
for our
say
time.
they're saving the taxpayers money.
Right, they're saving the taxpayers money, because when they're not doing nothing, they're going over there being productive, tearing them houses down, getting them out of there.
We've got coming out of our unsafe structure funds. We pay for the dumpsters. We also pay for asbestos inspections and removal. But what the highway department's been able to do for us is just astronomical. We've probably got 100 structures that need to come down. Before a lot of these houses to come down, just a standard house to come down would cost $15,000 to $20,000 to get down. We can get it down for 3 to 4. The building that David's talking about over in Jonesboro, we just got a first estimate. Swayze's not in our jurisdiction, but they got an estimate to take that building down over in Swayze. The estimate was $89,000. The building we took down, which is almost similar size in Jonesboro, David was able to get it down for us for less than $6,000. So area plan with the council's help and with the highway department's help, we got down more structures last year than any year in history. And we're already at 5 this year. So what the highway department's doing is just incredible.
But if we're doing all this work, are we at a point that we need to look at a reimbursement back to highway department or the county? No matter if you're doing it like area plan, like Ryan is saying, should the homeowner or should the owner of that property be paying?
I think that's more the area plan when they go to court. I don't really know all the.
Yeah, and we have started receiving some reimbursement. Actually, the first house we took down last year, we did get a check for $4,300. Some of them are setting up like monthly payments. So we are getting funds back into our unsafe building funds from it.
You know, I want to do whatever I can to support your request. I also know that if we grant you 10%, next meeting we're going to have a line out that door. It's going to go all the way down to the courthouse and halfway to the bypass.
I understand. I understand.
Well, I'd like to see this get a fair shot, so I'd make a motion to approve the request.
I second it.
I have a motion from Mr. Connor, a second from Mr. Poling, to approve the additional funding in the amount of $138,133, or that's the total, correct?
Yes.
$105,595 in the NVH, $137,538 in the MVH. The two funds combined is the $138,133, and following the schedule that was prepared. Any other questions or comments?
I would assume the motion, if it's passed, includes the corresponding changes to the salary ordinance.
Including the salary ordinance amendment.
I don't want my mailbox hit, but this is in no way in reference to that.
And what was that address again?
I'm just saying it's a lot.
I would just, it's not quite enough time for comment.
We're at the time for our comments or questions.
I mean, I want to do everything I can. I would rather spend the time to collaborate to try to figure out some either alternative ways or some things that Mr. Lemming is bringing up and things that we could either restructure or, you know, get reimbursements for, whatever it may be to get you to this point, as opposed to just giving the 10% rate. I would rather have the time to explore alternative ways that we can make this happen. So it's weird to say, I'm in support of getting you to this. I'm not in just one lump sum, 10%, here it is. Because I think there are things down the road in the future that we're going to be dealing with that we need to be cognizant of and be prepared for.
I guess I just don't feel like, I don't really want to charge the council or the commissioners for work we're doing when we're already there working, period. You know what I'm saying? You know, whether I'm helping the area plan or helping the commissioners out, doing the parking lot at Central Dispatch or anything like that, I don't really want to get done with the project and go, okay, you're Grant County area plan.
They just won't happen if you do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, then you're gonna do half the projects again because I'm basically charging you for my equipment and the labor on the highway side back to the government or the county, you know, that's.
If you guys can get this money from other places, can't you just give it to them later and just give them what they need? And when you figure out if you can pull money from other places, then you put it in there?
We're gonna have to do something about raises on down the road because this thing's not gonna stop
No.
anytime soon.
Again, I don't want my mailbox hit either.
Well, if they hit mine, you'll find a truck there, because it'll destroy it.
But, you know, again, the collaboration is well appreciated. And the fact of the matter is, we all answer to somebody. And your answer to the commissioners. So in my eyes, you know, if they wanted you to do whatever project that is,
Yeah.
they could request that.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
So-
but I guess my thing is I don't wanna turn around and say, all right, the highway department comes up here and cleaned the snow, so we need to send the commissioners a bill for cleaning the snow off the parking lot. We just pay it, we don't, you know what I'm saying, that's what they want it done, we don't send them a bill and say, okay, we got 4 dump trucks, 2 loaders, we spent 4 hours out here, we just do it and get it done.
Yeah, no, that's,
It
we
speaks
appreciate
It
that.
speaks highly of your character, and that's why your
Yeah.
department is ran as good as it is, and the guys all rally behind you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and like Frank said, you know, I wish we worked Monday through Friday from 7 to 3, and most of the time we can, but then there's that time when, you know, last night I had to go put high water signs out on, you know, Kim Road, so, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning, so it's like.
I still feel like in some of these, you know, demolitions, the property owners are skating by.
And I know
They're getting by with a lot.
Ryan's working on that, so that's what I kinda said is when we get done, are they gonna put a lien on it? So, you know, yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. We need to try to get our money back, at least of getting rid of the product, so.
I guess that's what I'm searching for right now is do we have the collaboration and those willing to explore those possibilities?
I think the area plan is working on that. I know, like he said, he got paid for one. I think they kind of work, that's through the court system, I guess. I ain't 100% on that.
See, that part's not your problem.
Right, yeah, I was gonna say, basically, that's not
Commissioners
my.
and area plans.
Yeah, I
problem.
guess that's why I was looking more at the TV.
No, I'll just
You need to
kinda-
talk to them
I
about
was gonna
that
say, I
one.
guess I'll kind of say is we kind of do that, like, if a guardrail's
But it's gonna
damaged
be a
or
while
bridge
before
is
they get their
damaged,
money. They'll
we're
have
going
to-
after insurance
they need to
companies,
put
making
that
sure
off
we get our dollars back on that.
County money. It's Joe.
Jim, you have a question or
Yeah,
comment?
no one's asked me, so I'm hesitant to break in here to this, but I'm gonna make a couple of comments. You're talking 2 separate issues here. Technically, I think if you would ask the State Board of Accounts, the work that the Highway Department is doing for departments that are not Highway Department should be reimbursing Highway Department's fund for the cost of that work that they're putting in. I haven't pushed it, we haven't really had conversation about it in detail. It's been mentioned in meetings, like I know the Central Dispatch project we've talked about, you know, what are we gonna pay out of those funds to the Highway Department for the work they've done. You know, some of the conversation took place in some of the meetings we had. Nothing's been followed up on to do that. One item we're talking about here is the Highway Department should be, I'll say from a legal standpoint, reimbursed by the department they're helping for their cost. That's one. Totally irrelevant to this pay thing you guys are talking about. That pay situation, you guys need to decide what you want to do with the pay, irrelevant to this reimbursement of the department for their cost. So I'm sitting here kind of chomping at my bit a little bit, and I'm not in your shoes, I'm in my own, so, but though you need to keep those things separate, in my opinion.
Yeah, that reimbursement, that may vary from year to year, the amount, and you can base that on, and use that for pay.
Well,
You
the
can-
money
it
goes
would
into the
change.
fund. You know, the money, so it's there available, do whatever you need to do with it, whether you're gonna put asphalt down, whether you're gonna put stone down, whether you're gonna pay
Replace equipment.
salaries.
He's
The
got
money
maintenance
goes
on
into that fund for whatever purpose you use Highway Department for. It's just that since you're using Highway Department staff for something other than highway work, those other departments are supposed to, we haven't done it yet, are supposed to reimburse the Highway Department for its costs.
Well, that may be a separate issue, but it's part of the res gestae, as we say in my business. It's part of the background, and it's something I remember. I mean, part of my appreciation for what they do is what they've done for my district and Jonesboro. in
Those are all great
particular.
things, not to say that's not a great thing, Mike, I agree with that totally. I mean, obviously, if you could, you know, we're paying the highway staff whatever money they're getting paid for their jobs, okay? And if they have time to do some things that they wouldn't be doing otherwise, that's great for them to collaborate and provide the service to the county. That is super, and that, we really should expect them to do that. I know there's savings involved to us, but we should expect that to happen. They shouldn't be just doing nothing if they have time to do something else that's helpful. So you gotta keep that in mind as you're weighing this whole situation, I think. You appreciate it, but they also should be doing it if it's available.
Frank, you bring up a great point that I didn't think of, is the wear and tear on the machinery that they are using for these tear downs.
It's expensive.
Exactly, and
Because
that
that
shortens the life of that machinery, and that is a cost that.
And that is hard on that machinery. When you go to tearing a building down, that's different than just going out here and digging a ditch. When you start ripping out foundation, a block building, very hard on excavators and stuff like that, loaders. Basically buckets. Tires? Don't even go there, cause I'm putting tires on one tractor and it's over $20,000 for 6 tires.
And see,
And then fine.
reimbursement for that cost.
I agree, I think the reimbursement should be there as well, and I appreciate the comments.
But the reimbursement should be separate from their pay. But he's gotta have employees to come back and do these jobs for the county.
Point is, if you don't have employees to do the jobs, they won't be there to help these little communities.
Sure.
Yeah, you gotta get
That's the
No
nexus.
doubt about that, but you can deal with that with any department you want to talk about. I mentioned to Angie, we should go through all the departments in county government. And she'll probably work on that here soon. What will it actually cost in general fund dollars, health fund dollars, whatever fund they're paying their employees, what would it cost to bring all of your employees up to something that's competitive to other counties of our size? Just like Dave's asking tonight. We haven't done that. We're out of our 10 counties of our size, in our group that we're always classified in by the state as they do their studies, we're always 9th or 10th out of that list of 10. I'm sure Dave is too. But if we're gonna bring him up to 4 or 5, what would it cost to bring everybody up to 4 or 5? You know, we can do that analysis.
This may be the beginning of it.
So I'm just saying, you're in a tough spot, I don't deny that, but
Well, look at
this wasn't brought back
look at
in
this
August.
way. We'll
Yeah,
save
the highway
you
department's-
money so you can get them up to where they need to be.
Well, in the highway department too, it's kind of like the sheriff's department, you know what I mean? They gotta go when he tells them to go. They gotta go at 4 in the morning, I gotta go at 4 in the morning. It's a lot different than,
But that's true, but the structure hopefully incorporates that. That's not changed. It's been that way for 50 years, or however long the highway department's been there. It's been their job to be on call when they have to be on call. It's been the sheriff's department's job to be on call when it's time, you know, kind of thing. So that condition hasn't changed. What's changed is the private sector environment as far as now the people that are getting paid for not working, like Mike said, so driving the cost of everything up at this point. You know, that's what's changing at this time. Their jobs haven't changed.
yeah, but
Their responsibilities
corporations
haven't changed.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing of the president we got in there now. They want everybody working for the corporations.
Those are factors that are changing.
Phil, this is a question for you, but I think I know the answer as far as the union contract. This would not affect that contract whatsoever.
No, that's totally separate.
Okay.
I mean, it may come back, to hear about it when it comes time for renegotiation, but it doesn't impact it at the moment.
Okay. Thank you. Is that all the comments from the members?
Well, I don't want to put Mr. Barkley on the spot or Mr. Malat. I would just say that I hope to encourage some collaboration and talk on the reimbursement, because I agree, Frank and everybody else that feels that reimbursement needs to be there. I would encourage those discussions to take place, because there is going to be some future costs that is going to be incurred because of this work, and we need to be prepared for that.
Yeah, and actually, Mike, just to be, I guess, further with that, as a job is being done by the highway department, that money or that reimbursement amount should be discussed beforehand, really, and determine if you need to reimburse you for this based on what your costs are, so to speak.
Who's raising that issue?
What's that?
Is anyone raising that issue
No.
other than you?
I'm just saying it's that way.
I understand, and that's your job to tell us what's
I'm just telling you.
supposed to happen.
It hasn't been brought up in any audit setting, but
I just like to see, regardless of the I's being dotted and the T's being crossed, all elements of government working together. This is the way it's supposed to be,
they should.
to get the people's work done at the best bang for the buck.
Is that all from the members? Public input. If you would, just come to the podium and state your name and your address, and if you'd like to make a public comment. No public comment. Roll call, please.
Okay. Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Rohrbach.
No.
Mr. Hicks.
Yes.
Mr. Poling.
yes.
Mr. Lemon.
No.
Mr. Middlesworth.
No.
Okay, that has passed 4-3. Wasn't unanimous, so the salary ordinance amendment cannot be done until another meeting.
Okay.
And we need to make it clear too, and I guess I didn't ask this question, that is your change retroactive to 1/1/22 is the next question of that.
That's a good
I
question.
wouldn't
That was-
push it, I'd say as soon as we can get it done, not retroactive. If you forgive that, I don't want to push this any farther than we
I'll
have
forgive
to.
that, yes, that would be fine with me.
So you have to put it on the agenda for next month for another vote on that because of salary.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's take a 10-minute recess. Continue conducting the business of the county. Next item under new business, item H, County IT Department, Marcus Elliott with the salary ordinance amendment.
Hello, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Marcus?
Hey, well, I'm back again for this salary ordinance. I attempted to do it last year around budget time, but it was like, I guess the timing wasn't right for it. So I'm coming by, since it's still the beginning of the year, to see if we can get it done. So my goal with this restructure is to basically set up as more of a tier system. So currently we have a vacant tier 2 position, and I'm looking to downgrade that to a tier 1, and then to give myself a little bump up, and for Brian to get a bump up as well from that. The tier 1, basically we have it set to $37,180. Usually tier 1s, I know when I got hired in and when Brian got hired in, we were making $30,000. So that's about a $7,000 increase. And you know, usually when you start off at a tier 2, you're at 38. So it's a pretty significant jump for a tier 1. So overall, my budget or my pay would get a $2,200 increase, making it $57,000. Brian's, his would go from $42,800 to $47,000, and then the tier 1, that one is currently a tier 2 still. It's at $43,580, and we would drop that down to a $37,180. So just to kind of make it tiered, and then for this third person over time, as they get experience and become more efficient and get better, you know, I would like to, you know, bump them up as well to tier 2 eventually. So, and the bottom part of that, I had, if you guys didn't go with that, basically to have Brian's salary get switched with the vacant position, since it's higher paying. But I spoke with Angie, and I guess I don't have to go through you guys for that, so you can disregard that second piece. So I'm more than happy to take any questions.
So if I recall, Marcus, the council back at budget time agreed to the concept of this somewhat due to Mr. Hicks taking that position within Central Dispatch, being the director. However, we never really talked about the dollar amounts, and these changes are within the budget currently.
Correct, yeah, there's no additional cost or anything like that.
Yeah, the total is the same, the 54.8, 42.8, 43.580 is 141.180. And then with the adjustment in pay per person, per tier, it still totals 141.180. I'm a little concerned about the tier 2 help desk that says 42,800, but yet tier 1 was 43,580. So tier 1's lower than tier 2.
Well, yeah, tier 1 is supposed to be the lower position.
Okay.
But generally, the tier 2 is supposed to be the more skilled technician, so what the tier 1 doesn't figure out, you're supposed to go to the tier 2.
Okay.
And then what the tier 2 can't figure out, they would basically come to me. Since I'm the IT director, I'm kind of the tier 3. And then if I can't figure out, then it goes to tier 4, which is where you reach out to vendors and consultants and things like that.
So why was tier 1 getting paid more than tier 2?
Well, it's right now it's a tier 2. That was a typo on my part.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's because it's a tier 2.
So
Because
part of your restructuring idea is to have the levels.
right, so that way we can have room for growth and things like that. Because before our department used to be 4 people. It was originally going to be 4 people, but when the previous IT director left, we met with Commissioner Burton, and he asked us, if we could get it done with just the 3 of us, and we would just all get, promoted, and that's what we did. So I became the IT director, and Brian and Kevin became tier 2 technicians. So they got bumped up from tier 1.
So, any other questions or comments? Again, this is to amend the salary ordinance, and the director would be the 57,000, correct? Tier 2 would be 47,000, and the tier 1 position would be 37,180. Any other questions? Do we need an effective date?
The next pay is on 3/4.
3/4. If there's no other questions from the members, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. President, make a motion to make a motion to approve the request as presented.
Second. I have a motion for Mr. Scott, a second for Mr. Hicks to approve, to amend the salary ordinance and make it effective 3/4/22, to increase the IT director's position to 57,000, tier 2 help desk support tech to 47,000, and the tier 1 help desk IT position to 37,180. Angie, you have everything you need?
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Public input? Roll call, please.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Rohrbach.
Aye.
Mr. Hicks.
Yes.
Mr. Poling.
Yes.
Mr. Lemming.
Yes.
Mr. Middlesworth.
Yes. Motion carries. That's all we
It
have.
was unanimous, so it takes care of it.
Thanks again, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Next item under new business, item I, County Commissioner Mark Bardsley with an additional appropriation in CCD.
Good evening. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members. The request that we have is paralleling the prosecutor with his request for $22,000 for vehicle purchase. We would request that $22,000 be appropriated out of the Cume Capital Development Fund in order to provide one of those vehicles for the prosecutor's office.
Thank you. So the request is an additional appropriation within the CCD in the amount of $22,000.
You all have that letter printed. This is just a copy of the letter back in July when you originally did it, so you know what we're talking about. That second item, disregard that 10,000 thing. That's already been done back in when it happened. So this is just a copy of the letter so you know what we're talking about. Okay.
Again, as Mr. Faulk said, that we approved this back last year. The cars didn't come in, so it needs to be reappropriated.
Yeah, the former permission died December 31st, so we need new permission.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to approve the request as presented.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Lemming, a second from Mr. Scott to approve within the CCD fund an additional appropriation in the amount of $22,000 for a vehicle purchase. Any other questions or comments? Public input? Roll call, please.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Rohrbach.
Aye.
Mr. Hicks.
Yes.
Mr. Poling.
Yes.
Mr. Lemon.
Yes.
And Mr. Middlesworth.
Yes. That motion carries as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Next item under new business. Item J, County Auditor Jim McCord with the additional appropriation in the general fund.
And this, again, is something similar to what we just did. This is a request for you to appropriate money in the general fund for remaining costs of the dispatch towers. And we had appropriations in 2021. The year died, so the appropriation died, but we still have expenses that we didn't spend in 21 that we're going to be spending in 22. So there's a detail that shows the amounts that were remaining under contract starting 1/1 of 22. You can see MPX Solutions has a couple items, Rex Collins Electric has, and I've got an amount for fencing. That is a projected amount. I asked Pyramid Consulting's input on what kind of amount we should include for fencing, because there's no current contract that at this point. And they gave me this number of 120,000. I hope that's high. I hope it doesn't happen, but that's the number I was given, so it's on.
So I want to reiterate the Commissioner's listing, the Highway Department can install fence.
We would hope it'd be less.
That's correct.
There will be less than 120.
So anyway, like I say, I'm going to ask you for that appropriation, hoping that that doesn't get spent. Okay, that's all said and done. But yeah, I'm putting in what our consultant said. We should stick in the line items.
Can we take the 120,000 out and deal with it later?
And I just do it at once. I wouldn't take it out. If you want to reduce it, you might. But my point is you might as well go ahead and get it appropriated. If we don't have to spend it, we're not going to spend it.
Then if we get the county highway department to put it in, we're not to spend it.
Well, this is another question. Technically, like I said before, whatever their cost to help you do that, you should be paying them that cost, whatever that is. If it's 20,000, if it's 10,000, whatever it is. Well, I understand, but at this point, there's no contract that to happen. There's no commitment from the highway department to do that. So that's why that line item's here. And I guess I'd ask you to go ahead and appropriate it. When it becomes, then we'll only spend that amount. There'll be that much left not spent. So obviously, I'm not going to spend what we don't have to do.
I make a motion to approve the request.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Connor, a second from Mr. Scott to approve within the general fund an additional appropriation in the amount of $450,000 to various tower, dispatch tower equipment.
I might add this too, because I asked Todd Darnell from Pyramid about this fencing thing, and his reaction was they're going to have some conversations with MPX Solutions to see what their cost or their bid might be to do that work. Don't have that at this point. With the understanding they didn't think highway department was going to do that piece. That may change. Okay, that may change.
Yeah, can we get somebody to bid on it too?
Well, it's already been bid, I think, twice.
Well, yeah, those bids were not accepted though.
Okay.
No bid has been accepted for that part of the project.
So these companies are gonna know that we just approved $120,000
Yeah,
fencing, so probably every
that
quote.
doesn't, well, they're not gonna know. Well, I mean, if they will,
They
this
will now.
meeting they will, but I mean, just because it's there doesn't mean we're gonna spend that kind of money. said,
I'm saying when the bids come in.
I know what you're saying, and I can't say you're totally wrong with the thought, but hopefully that wouldn't impact what we're gonna pay. I don't know.
Check, you're gonna do it for 120?
Well, keep in mind,
You're gonna do it.
you don't have, when the commissioners receive bids for something, you don't have to accept any bid. You don't have to accept any one bid. You can refuse them all. And that's when they say, hey, highway department, do this, you know, kind of thing. But that's up to them to do. I'm just telling you, this is the amount I was given to put in, that's why it's there. And you need to have an appropriation to pay whatever cost you're gonna pay, whatever that becomes.
So I have a motion, I have a second. Any other questions or comments?
How close are the towers being completed?
Yeah, do we,
You're asking the wrong guy, I don't know.
can we get an update on that, Mr. Bursley? Do you know?
I talked with the EMA director today. The all manufactured steel is done. 2 of the 3 locations are ready because the electricity has been run to it. We're still waiting on the 3rd. Once that happens, the construction crew should be clear of all their COVID problems, and Pyramid is working to get a start date, and that should be relatively soon, in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we're hoping.
Mark, that is to erect the steel, is that correct?
Yes, all steel has been produced, it's manufactured, it's stacked and bundled right now up in South Bend. We're just waiting as soon as they can bring it in after the last electric cable has come in for the 3rd site. Then we can bring it on, start having it erected as soon as the crew's available.
I can say this, I guess, answer the question a little bit where we stand, because the tower material, we've now paid that off. We've paid for all the material for the towers, okay? And this, you see the line item for MPX Solutions for tower labor, $202,000.
Yeah.
None of that, that's the contract, none of that's been spent yet. So
that's for them to put the towers
I assume
up.
that's their labor to erect the towers. None of that's been spent yet, okay? We haven't paid a dime on that one yet. The electrical work, I assume that's Rex Collins. They have more work to do as far as electric at those sites. That is the amount that's still remaining to be paid on electric work there. Yeah, the only thing left at this point that we haven't paid, because we have paid MPX Solutions material, would be the tower labor, tower electric, and then whatever the fencing becomes at some point. And I will say this, remember we bought the tower equipment, the equipment that gets put on the towers. We leased that through U.S. Bank. $1,250,000 was the amount of that. We've drawn down all but about $300,000 of that. So we've paid them, I'm going to say roughly $950,000 for material so far that we bought, equipment that we bought so far. Still some left to go. Okay, so it's, I mean, the number's winding down at this point.
So by probably June, they should be all up and going with that?
Well, I'll let Mark answer that question. I don't know about that. I'm just saying where we are money-wise, what we've spent.
Yeah.
We haven't spent anything unless our Pyramid has signed off on it and the commissioners have approved it, because they've signed off on what we paid. So that's what we've paid so far.
I know they get them up so sheriff's department's not hung out there in dead areas or fire or EMS and everything else.
I will try and get a go date on radio traffic as soon as I can and forward that to y'all. But I don't have that right offhand.
Maybe they need boost along.
Thank you, Mr. Bartlett, for that update. Public input? No, roll call, please.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Rohrbach.
Aye.
Mr. Hicks.
Yes.
Mr. Polley.
Yes.
Mr. Lemming.
Yes.
Mr. Milzer.
Yes. The next item under new business, item K, County Council with additional appropriation. As you know, there's quite a few loans that the county has outstanding. I guess, what is it, 2 now or 3? I know there's a bond out that's for around $8 million. And then the one that's in front of you, the Central Dispatch loan is about $548,000. And also there's a lease I think that's,
Well, you got the capital equipment lease we talked about just a minute ago, and these 3 debts. Other than that, there's some, like an ambulance lease, there's
yeah.
IT equipment type things, or some things there. But as far as facility, building type stuff, there are 3 debts. 2 with some work we've had done, one's a long-term bond issue, one's a short-term loan that's getting close to paying off, and then this one.
So my thought process was, and after talking to Mr. McCourt, you know, what would be the chance of paying down some debt and then paying one of these loans off? And so I asked him to advertise to go ahead and pay this one off early. And it's $548,000, and it runs out December the 15th, 2024. And as you know, our general fund balance is pretty good. I just want to see us, you know, with the 10 million ARP money, I want to see us in a spot financially in 10 to 15 years that, you know, we're able to borrow the maximum amount we can to someday maybe facilitate a new, you know, jail complex. And I think that we got to start laying the groundwork now for that. I think this is just, you know, one step toward that to being to tying up some of those loans that we have outstanding. And so that's my thought process. Again, you know, I appreciate all the local elected officials. You know, just because we have it done, just because it's appropriate, don't mean you spend it. I think they returned about 2.9 million last year. That was my thought process. As far as the ARP money, the 10 million, you know, I've been pushing pretty hard for a new facility for the courthouse, for the complex. And if we can do that and then, you know, build a new facility, and then wherever we build that facility, you know, plan for a jail beside it, I think financially at that time, you know, that within 10 to 15 years, we're going to need to be able to borrow, you know, quite a bit of money. So that's my thought process. If you have any questions or comments you want to make, I'll open the floor. But the request is to pay off the central dispatch loan principal, and it's the amount of $548,000.
Yeah, well, actually, it's a little more than that, Shane. This is what we needed in addition to what we already budgeted. Remember, we budgeted so much already for this year's payment.
That's right.
So this would be on top of that. And then if you approve it, the idea would be we'd make the payment in June, with our June 15th payment to pay it off. That's what would be the intent. This was the original $750,000 loan we took out.
Jim, do you agree we're in a good financial position to pay that off early?
Yes.
I can almost see the air quotation marks. Yes.
This money is going to be paid from the general fund at some point. And right now it's ballooned to pay off in December of '24. So well, we've made the comment in other budget settings, I think, you know, you have to have the money at some point. You're going to refinance it at the time it comes due, or you're going to pay it off when it comes due. So in this case, you've got cash in the bank.
How much interest will this save us?
Well, it's 2.99%. I should have brought that chart with me. I didn't bring it with me. It's not huge.
It's like 16,000.
I'd have to pull up the schedule out. I didn't even get it. Do you have it with you?
I did.
Okay, Angie's got the schedule. But I mean, it's 2.99%. And we are not making 2.99% on our money.
That's close enough.
So there is savings.
You know?
There is a savings. And I couldn't argue with Shane. If you're only paying 0.5%, I'd say no, don't worry, don't pay it all. But you're paying 2.99, so you're going to save some. So and you got to pay all that money anyway at some point. So yeah, that's okay. I couldn't argue strongly against him when he asked about it. So
I think what you're saying makes sense. And I also agree that we're in a position or a point that we need to consider our buildings and the facilities that we have. I mean, you know where I stand. I'm tired of putting Band-Aids on 140-year-old buildings, and we know all the problems that we have here as well. I think the day has come that we need to look at new facilities and you know, upgrade what we have and go with the times a little bit, if you will. And anytime that we can pay off a loan early and save a little bit of money, I think it's well worth it.
The other part of that too is, and Jim and I talked a little bit about it, and I don't know how it plays in, but obviously there's some ratings and bond ratings. does this play into that? If you pay off something early, does that give you a better rate? I would assume it would. We really don't know. We
Wouldn't hurt
discussed it.
anything, but this isn't a significant number.
No.
I mean, it's small when it comes to municipal financing like that. So I couldn't imagine having much of an impact, nor hurt you any, I wouldn't think.
Another, little tidbit.
I'd make a motion to approve the request.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Connor, a second from Mr. Scott to approve an additional appropriation within the general fund. And what do you want the total to be?
It's $548,000.
Okay, $548,000.
That's obviously a rounded number for me, but it's, the actual number is 548, or 547, 874, 71, so 548 is a good number.
Okay.
Just for information to the interest, looks like, let's look here, 29,000. 35, 36,000 you're gonna save maybe, that range. A little more, maybe a little more than that.
Very good.
So there's some savings, I mean, it's.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Public input? Roll call, please.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Rohrbach.
Aye.
Mr. Hicks.
Yes.
Mr. Poling.
Yes.
Mr. Lemon.
Yes.
Mr. Middlesworth.
Yes. Motion carries. I think that's all of the new business. We'll move on to old business. Local alcohol and beverage board appointment. This time I'll turn it over to the committee chairman, Mr. Lemon.
Yes, to my knowledge, we've only received the one application, which is Elizabeth Wright, which would be a reappointment for us. So at this time, I guess we would just ask that we reappoint her.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Lemming. Okay. And a second from Mr. Poling to reappoint to the Indiana Alcohol Tobacco Commission Elizabeth Wright. The terms from January 22 through December 22. Any other questions or comments from the members? Public.
Do you have the forms that we
Already
need?
signed.
Already got it? Okay,
Yep.
we're all set, okay.
We're good.
Public input? Roll call, please.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Rohrbach.
Aye.
Mr. Hicks.
Yes.
Mr. Poling.
Yes.
Mr. Lemon.
Yes.
Mr. Middlesworth.
Yes. Motion carries. Next item under old business, item B, County Commissioners Mark Bardsley with the courthouse repair proposal, and also the ARP funding update and Stanley security warranty.
Good evening again. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Just as I think the first one up is courthouse information. This past week, President and Chuck Poling met with us, and we did a Zoom meeting, Teams meeting, WebEx meeting, whatever you want to call it. But we met in Amoresco, talked about the project. If you recall, this project was to set perimeter drains around the courthouse, and the projected cost of approximately $2.2 million. The council asked us to reevaluate, look at some things, potential ways to take care of this without the expense. Brad Driver is here for Amoresco as well as Mark Airbrandt, and they are going to be presenting to you not only any information you want on the perimeter drain concept, but also the tool you would ask about regarding how to inventory, to look at our needs for all of our facilities. So at this point, unless you have specific questions for me, I'd turn it over to Brad Driver and Mark Airbrandt.
Good evening, councilors. For the record, my name is Mark Airbrandt. I'm a senior account executive with Amoresco. With me today, I have Brad Driver, who's our project developer. as well as Garen Evans, who is virtually, he's our Director of Engineering, and Mark Reddish, who is our Asset Planner Director for the company. As Commissioner Bardsley had mentioned, we did have a meeting, virtual meeting on Monday. We talked a little bit about some of the questions that were asked at the last council meeting to address some of the materials and things like that. In that, on the water infiltration issues there at the courthouse, we listened and heard strongly from the council members that they really want to make sure that they're looking at their buildings, understanding what's going on, be able to make good decisions on investing money, whether it's in a courthouse, whether it's in this building, or whether it's building a new building. And so we had a lot of success. We've done more of the Indiana County work here in the state of Indiana than almost every competitor that we have combined. So we do have a tremendous amount of experience, but one of the things that this asset planning module will help the council do is we can evaluate some of your facilities, give you an idea of when and how much money, whether it's short-term or long-term, that you may have to invest in these buildings. Then you could make a decision whether you think that it's a good investment to invest in that building, or maybe possibly look at something else. And so I have Garen Evans. I know he'd like to say a few words, and then Mark Reddish would like just briefly to share with you a little bit of presentation and show you what this does and how it can help you in your county to make good, solid investments on your facilities.
I have a little bit before Gary started, if you guys want to take one of these and pass them down. So Mark Reddish will be going over a little bit of this slide deck with you. There should be enough for Jim as well. I think I had 7 copies today.
Yeah, hi, this is Garen Evans. Can everybody hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Good evening, gentlemen. I will be very brief. I was with Brad at the meeting last month. We discussed some specifics to the waterproofing repair at the courthouse. As was discussed or mentioned earlier, we had a virtual meeting to go over some of the investigation that we had looked at into those items. With the understanding that our proposal, if you're looking at it with the thought of good, better, best, was probably the best solution in the sense of waterproofing the foundation for a 30 to 50 year time frame. But it also included, some stormwater structures and piping to move essentially all the stormwater from the courthouse square. So roof drains, footer drains, any surface catch basins, to move that to the storm sewer. Understanding that that's an expensive endeavor, we are working with the engineer and some subcontractors to look at what might be some less expensive, and not sacrifice quality in the sense of we may not get all the stormwater off the square, but we'll do the best effort, focus the effort on keeping the moisture out of the basement of the courthouse. So we are investigating that, and we're still looking into that, and should have additional information probably next month. But I want to get to the point of this presentation on our asset planning tool. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that this tool would be really helpful. We have used it with the county in the past. We did some space planning, as you are probably aware, back in 2015. And listening to your meeting here this evening, the topic that the judge brought up about the jail overcrowding and the detention center, possibly getting that reopened for juveniles and potentially female inmates. That was something that we had looked at in the past as well, and we actually were using this tool internally to help us with some of that decision making. And as Mark had mentioned, when you go to make decisions, I can say personally, I'm on my local school board, so I know what it's like to sit in your chair and have to make decisions about where and how we spend money and how we approve budgets. This tool will help you make those decisions in the sense of, is it good to invest this money? What will this money be into this particular building or facility? What are our options? and including, are we at a point where it does make sense to build new or to look at alternative facilities? So with that, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to let Mark Reddish introduce himself and get through this quickly. And then we want to share some of your database, some of your buildings that we have already. So I'll let you take it, Mark.
Thanks, Karen. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Hear you.
Can hear you.
Let's see if we can get it.
See you now.
Okay, great. I'm going to share a screen so we can get to the presentation that. See what, and let me know. Can you see that presentation? Is that happening?
No. Yeah, there it goes.
Okay. Well, good evening, commissioners. My name is Mark Reddish. I'm with Amoresco's Asset Sustainability Group, and we'll step through some slides about the platform, and then, as Garen said, we'll take a look at the database that we have for you already. I want to be respectful of your time. I'm already impressed by your attention span this evening, so I'm going to try to be brief. And if you have any questions, of course, I'll be free to answer them. So we're part of Amoresco. I work side by side with Mark and with Garen and Brad. Sometimes we're the tip of the spear where we go in there and we try to identify all the needs. Sometimes we come in later in the relationship and try to help with creating a framework to make decisions against. What I do is I try to build a bridge between your facilities and your finances. I want to try to put an understanding out there of how much money you have right now in deferred maintenance and what your future capital needs are. I'll go through how we go around getting that data, but note that this is a capital study, not a maintenance study. I don't want to go in and talk about your maintenance practices. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to let you know of your buildings using life cycles, what's expired, what's high risk, what should be at the top of your priority projects, and try to give you some data that you can make decisions about where to invest and where not, frankly, where not to invest. I'm trying to align this with some of your goals in the future. And I've done a lot of this work. I have a national role with Amoresco. I'm actually out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I do this all over the country. We've done this at about 3.2 billion square feet. We've got over 110,000 buildings that we perform these services over. That's a little pedigree, but it also is important for you because a lot of what we do ends up in costing and estimating and understanding what the costs of replacing systems are. And we use not only some national databases like RS Means, but we also use our own finished life cycle profile buildings that are in the database to try to give you the best pricing ideas going forward. So this is an exercise in understanding deferred maintenance. I'm sure everybody in the room has been lectured on deferred maintenance before. It's important to note that deferred maintenance can equal risk, but deferred maintenance is also a reality. You're always going to have some. In fact, it's a best practice to allow for some deferred maintenance. You don't want a building built in 1950 to be in an as-built shape. You let some of it defer so that you can judiciously spend your money, but you want to manage how much deferred maintenance you have and how much high priority items you have in your deferred maintenance. You can see the statistic there that's industry standard. $1 of deferral becomes $4 of maintenance over time. It just is an expensive way to run your operations if you have too much deferred maintenance. It's part of what we try to do. So one of the things that we do, and I've done these exercises again at Grant County and with a number of other institutions in Indiana and beyond, is we're trying to go through, I always say kind of folksy, if you pick up the building, you turn it over and you shake it, whatever doesn't fall out is what we're trying to understand, what we're trying to assess. We're trying to get to those major capital systems and understand how much life do they have left, if any, and when they will expire, how much is it going to cost the county to actually renew them or replace them? Again, the slide that we have up here talks to those life cycles. So typically, public buildings have a 50-year lifespan. I know your courthouse is historic, but typically you'll see public buildings built with a 50-year lifespan. And in that 50 years, you'll have systems that will cycle 2 or 3 times. You'll have some systems that will only cycle once. What's important to note is that as buildings age, they get more expensive. And 65% of the value of that replacement doesn't happen until that last 20 years of a building. So as your buildings age, it does put more pressure on. And again, you can't make good decisions without good data. That's what this exercise is all about, is just trying to get you data to make decisions against. So I just, before I get into the database and what we do, let me just talk to, essentially there's a data collection process called a facilities condition assessment. And this is where our engineering team uses some of our technology that I'll show you here, goes on site, visits your 6 buildings, and again, says we document what's in the building from an inventory perspective. We document its condition. We document how much time is left, how many years are left on its life cycle. And then we assign an action like this has to be repaired, this has to be replaced, this has to be studied, etc. And then a dollar amount gets associated with that action. Okay, this has to be replaced. It's going to cost $25,000 and it's got 5 years left. So in 2027, we put it out there that you should be prepared for a $25,000 capital replacement item. One of the metrics that I'll bring up today, and that's why I have this slide here, is we're trying to understand what's your current replacement value of your entire portfolio. God forbid something happens that every building goes down and you have to rebuild it like for like. How much money would you need to generate? And then once we have that number through a facilities condition assessment, we understand what percentage of that value is currently in deferral. So if a building is brand new, it's got a 0% amount of deferral, and using the metric that I have up on the screen here, the facility condition index of a brand new building is 0. So a building with a 0 to 5% FCI, facility condition index, is in good shape. 5 to 10% is in fair shape. 10% to 30% is in poor shape, and above that is critical. We want to understand each of your buildings' FCI as well as your portfolio. It gives you tools to understand, again, the percentage of the building's value in deferral, where the risk is, where your capital dollars may need to go. So we're just providing you tools to make some decisions with. So just to give you an idea, the asset management industry advocates try to maintain a 10% FCI if you can. So if a tolerable amount of risk is having 10% of the value of a building or 10% of the value of the portfolio in deferral. One caveat: those items in deferral, we can't have them be high risk items, right? We have to manage what's in there. But this just, what we're trying to do is give you that data to understand what the FCI of each of your buildings are, where are they, how to benchmark them against each other, what will it cost to bring buildings down to a tolerable amount of risk. Before I get into the database, are there any questions about that?
I don't think so.
Interrupt me, stop me whenever you'd like. So what I have up here is, this is a web-based tool that we use. It's called Asset Planner. This is entirely Amoresco. We have software architects and software engineers and support and training teams to support this. And as Brad mentioned, we've done, I think, 3 small projects with you since, I want to say maybe 2013 or 14 was the first one. And we've kind of brought your buildings into the database piecemeal. I think we started with Saline Bank. There was a Garthwaite Road exercise. There was another exercise around the detention, etc. And the data has varying degrees of validation, if you will. And so what we're recommending is we think it would be in your best interest to get all of this data up to date and as current as possible, do an assessment to go through each of your buildings and to understand the condition of every system in there. So again, you can understand how much FCI, how much deferral, how much risk. So just quickly on the data here, what you'll be able to see, and note here that this is in 2020, because this is the last time we did an exercise on the data. We want to bring it all up to date. I know that your portfolio it has, I take all the sites out of here and we just take a look at how many buildings you have. You have 6 buildings. You have 284,323 square feet, and your current replacement cost of that is just shy of $75 million, okay, for those 6 buildings. And some of these numbers are from 2015, some are from 2017, some of them are for 2020. I want to get this data up to date. As everybody in the room knows, there was a massive inflationary hit this year, and that will be reflected in the cost to do some of this renewal, some of this capital renewal. I think it's important for you to see in today's dollars where everything is at. A couple more minutes and then I'll be done. What we can do here is I can show you from a portfolio perspective how much total deferral you have in year 1, as well as what your capital needs will be in subsequent years. This is because we're establishing the life cycle of all of those systems. So in year 2 and 3, these are all systems that have 1 year left, 2 years left, 5 years left. This is a system that's 19 years left, etc. What we'll end up doing is, in addition to saying, here's the system, is it outside of life cycle, thereby in your deferred maintenance, or does it have a couple years left? We're not only pinning the year, we're saying here's the cost associated with it, but we're also going to do a prioritization exercise with it, where the assessors go through and say, the current state of that system right now, could it shut the building down? Does it represent a life safety hazard? Is there a code violation? Are there operational or energy savings associated with its replacement? We're going to ask those questions. Those questions, when the answer is yes, actually put a weight on that system in my database. If you have 2 or 3 yeses, it's a heavier weight. And the heavier the weight, the higher the priority. So right now the system is saying you have $1.64 million of items that are in your high priority. It's a dynamic database. I can go in there and I can click on that and I can see, if I come over here, I can see what your highest score items are, and I can understand, I can go through and understand why. Why are these high priority items? What's driving this? How much risk is there? Is it just an operational or energy savings? That's one thing. That's important to know, but I want to know which items are actually potentially shutting your building down. And then if we start coupling things together, like, well, these are public facing or these have inmates in them, that increases your liability, right? So we want to know, are there safety issues? Are there code violations where we're actually interfacing with the public or where we have inmates, et cetera? Again, you need good data to make good decisions, and that's what we're trying to equip you with. This is a database that we established this for you, and I know that there's talk about an extended relationship with Amoresco. I would advocate that as part of the engagement, we can keep this database up to date for you so we don't stagger it. I think we find a way that once we go in there and do this condition assessment for you and get the data all the way up to snuff, we then figure out a way that every time a capital project gets done, it gets updated in this system, and then you have a real-time living, breathing facilities capital planning tool.
And Mark, this is Brad. So one of the things I want to let them know, this data right now, some of this, like when we did Saline Bank back in 2014, that was when you guys just took over Saline Bank. So we have not that, some of that data that Mark was showing you where we've got a lot of text in there and we show what we did in that building or how we assessed that building back in 2014. We do not have that updated information of what you guys have done with that building, especially since you put 911 in there, right? And then some of this other stuff on the community corrections building as well as the complex here. Some of the things, it was early back in 2015. You guys have made some improvements to that building since then. Again, that data we've not gone back in for you guys to be able to upgrade that information with what you've done in here, right? So you guys have made some improvements to that. So some of that stuff would come off of that list. Especially out at Garthwaite Road. When we did Garthwaite Road, I just learned in my meeting the other day on Monday that you guys actually are not in that old facility anymore, right? You built a new facility out there for EMS, is that right?
There is a new
We're still kind of in
facility.
the old, yeah.
Okay,
We have a new one.
okay. But what you were using it for when I assessed Garthwaite Road back in 2016, 17, is that you had EMS in there and you were running some other things out of there, and I don't know if that's where you are now with that, right? So that's a little bit of like this data that Mark is showing on the screen right now. That's when we did the assessments of some of those buildings at those times and to be able to see what's going on. So the important thing now is that how can we come in and put boots on the ground to be able to go back through those 6 buildings, assess what you really have, so that you guys have some information now in 2022 to really be able to understand what's going on.
What's the cost of this?
So we ran some rough numbers for you. I think we could do a full facilities condition assessment of your entire portfolio with boots on the ground for right around $20,000 for a one-time fee. The software itself is about $4,700 a year, and that would include us going in and actually updating it for you, so that all of this, whenever there are projects done, we'd establish a process. Maybe Brad would put a call into whomever's managing projects for you, if it's not him, every quarter, and understand what have you done, and we can get the data up to date, or Vishal or somebody else from our side.
That's anything from where you guys, I mean, here in the complex building, you guys have gone through with new carpet here in the past. I want to say, what, Tim, probably 3 years. You guys have done carpet over here. You've done things. You've painted. You
partial stuff.
But those are the kind of things that as you guys are doing your own improvements within your buildings, you need to be able to update that and keep this tool handy, right? And that's what Jim had brought up last time in last month's meeting about when I was talking about this a little bit. We all understand that you guys have full-time jobs, right? And the commissioners have full-time jobs. So that's what Mark is talking about, that annual service, is that we can help you guys keep this data tool up to date, so you're able to use it annually, or every 6 months you guys want to see something, or when it comes budget time and you guys are sitting down saying, where are we this year? What have we done? What do we need to be looking for? The commissioners need to be able to use it in their planning as well, right? So that's what this tool can help you with that.
So is there a contract for this 4,700 for 5 years, 3 years, or we do it year to year?
Whatever you'd like. You know, if somebody goes out for a longer term from us, we typically do a 3% annual escalation. And if somebody agrees to a longer term, then we try to incentivize you with keeping that inflationary number down.
We have some customers, obviously, that want to plan and budget for a three-year with our ongoing services like this, right? But you got to realize, Mark, why don't you touch a little about the people that are actually working on this tool behind the scenes for our clients, though.
Yeah, we've got a pretty big team. I think we've got about 45 people now supporting this database. So that's customer service people and training staff, but also a huge team of developers and software architects. And there's also a fair amount. I do a certain amount of consulting on the data. So one of the things that we would do after the facilities condition assessment is done is we'll come back and give you a presentation on what we found. And typically out of those presentations, we'll make some recommendations about where you might want to have some workshops and try to dive in. Pretty typical outcome is a priority workshop where we try to understand what's driving all the priorities and try to flush those out and see and evaluate the real risk. As I was saying before, what could actually shut a building down versus what might just offer some operational savings. Let's try to kind of get some of the noise out of that conversation for you.
Yeah, I appreciate the presentation regarding the data, and obviously, using that as a capital plan tool. And I think that's something to consider, but at this time, we're not going to make a decision on that.
Sure. No, and we're not prepared to any kind of proposal tonight, right? I mean, the question was asked of what are we looking for? Do you guys think that this is something, if we would prepare a proposal, is this something that would go back in front of the commissioners for them to use out of, I'm assuming, Commissioner Bardsley, you guys have some sort of a fund for items like this?
would probably pursue an additional appropriation with human capital development and put that into our contractual. That way, the building development, all that, and I think that's a logical place to take it. But Mr. McWhort may have some ideas on where we could draw money else other than that.
Is this something that you guys, is this where you guys think you need to go with something like this? I mean, as you talk about, do we repair or do we buy or new, or do we build new, right? I mean, you need something that needs to be able to make those decisions. And we can also, within this, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but we can also provide space utilization planning as part of that tool, correct?
Yeah.
Right. So the decisions of where do we put these people, what's going on? Because if we got you in those workshops down the road of somebody saying, yeah, we think we need to be able to build new, or we need to be remodeled, where do we put those people in the short term, right? What spaces do we have, or what's going on? I don't know how. I mean, it's been several years since I've been through the sailing bay, but that building had a heck of a lot of square footage, and I don't know, Mark, if you can pull that up real quick and see what the square footage of alone was just a sailing bank. But I can guarantee that you probably don't have it full over there right now. Am I right? So what could go in there? What is happening in there, right? Back in 2015, we made a presentation that, we looked at what was going to go on over there. Some of the things that we had talked about was looking at people that come into your county to pay things, right? That how many services are people coming in to be able to pay something, whether it be child support tax, right? I think I hear people showing up over at the courthouse paying that on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, right? From property taxes. As we stood here, I think when we were doing that back in 2015, it was around property tax paying time. I can't remember if it was the fall or spring, but you had people like as we were in this building, they were coming in here and they were asking, like, where do I go to pay my property taxes, right? And I think one of the things that we showed back in 2015 is trying to utilize Sailing Bank. And I think, Shane, you told me that you guys have already taken those teller cages out, but we had made a recommendation back then of possibly looking at using the teller cages as that area of people coming in, whether they're paying this tax, or they're paying child support or whatever, but you get them funneled into one area to be able to do that, right? And so you're trying to say, what am I doing, and where are people coming into buildings, and how are they getting places, right? And so that's a little bit of what we can help you guys with space utilization. How am I utilizing the spaces, the square footage of 285,000 square feet? How am I utilizing it today? And what would I need if it needs to be new? What does those new buildings need to look like, right? So that's a little bit about what we can bring to the table for you guys. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Is that all you have, Mr. Barkley, regarding the courthouse?
I believe at this time, we are continuing to review some ideas that I think that we talked about Monday, and hope to have some other proposals available for us to look at. But I think on the courthouse side of things, I'm moving on to our next item.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead and proceed on.
I believe, as I'm trying to look real quick, next issue is American Rescue Plan. We have continued to work at this particular point. The concept is that we can use recovery loss funding all the way up to $10 million of the $12.7 million that we have. And so as we look at that, we'll have probably some different ideas, as Mr. Nevels has already kind of alluded to. But under the 2.7, we do have the recommendation that we talked about last month, that we want to move forward with assisting the Gas City project. I believe room, and he is going to be sharing and representing Gas City. Our MOU is just about where it needs to be, but I think there, at least the question on who the receiver of the building is actually going to be and making sure that they're in the MOU as well. But if Mr. Miller has wants to share, I'd ask him to do that at this time.
Good evening, Jason Miller, representing City of Gas City. I'm the city engineer here on behalf of the mayor. Be glad to answer any questions. We understand that the concern would be a nonprofit entity that would be satisfactory to both the council and the commissioners, as well as the city or the school entity. One of the things that we have been working on over the past month is incorporating an agreement or language that would also make this facility available for emergency disasters, any type of emergency shelter that would be needed for the county, your Red Cross, fires, whatever it may be, as needed and as determined by the commissioners or Grant County EMA. So I'd be glad to answer any questions. I think the mayor's on vacation. The city attorney is not feeling well this evening, so I think the request at this point would be if there's concerns about naming a specific entity or having some questions about the MOU, sidebar discussion with Mr. Stephenson would be to arrange a meeting approximately 2 weeks or so from now with entities that are individuals representing each entity to discuss and finalize any details. By all means, I certainly would welcome a vote if that's where the pleasure of the council would be. The city is anxiously ready to move forward on executing the MOU once the language is agreed by the council and the commissioners. Ultimately, we're looking for acceptance that the $2.5 million would be committed for this project so that we can proceed. And one of the clarifications that Commissioner Bardsley has asked and added to the MOU is this money would only be used under an as-needed basis. If all other remedies of the funding has been exhausted, that the scope has not been increased to capture that $2.5 million, that then and only then would that money be made available. If it's not necessary for the construction, that as the commissioners see fit, I believe is how it's worded, that then and only then would the money be made available. That's something the city would agree to. It's in the MOU. We're here as we represented last meeting and in several other meetings. We'd like to get this project moving forward. We've got a great plan. It is shovel ready. It is included inside of the READY grant. Additional documentation has been submitted on that, and we've got a $17 million bond that is the city's money that is put up for this project. So I'd be glad to answer any questions. Certainly if you want to move forward on this evening, or if you want to meet in the March meeting to finalize things, we're certainly here ready and willing to do whatever your pleasure is.
This time I'll turn it over to Phil. What's your recommendations at this point? Everyone at the table should have received a copy of the MOU, but I don't know if it's the final copy or not.
Well, I don't know if it's the final copy or not either, because of course I sent one to you. I also sent one to Mr. Bardsley and Kyle, their attorney, and also to David Glitfield. I haven't really heard back from anybody yet as to whether or not they want to see any changes in this MOI, so I don't think we have an agreement at this point to approve. Plus, we have the issue, do we need a name? Initially, there was some talk about using Central All Schools Building Corporation, but I looked up and at least the two I found had been dissolved, administratively dissolved. There is a third one for the middle school. I don't know if they want to use that. Jason and I talked about possibility of forming a new entity. All of that's possible, but it needs to get decided, I think, and the agreement needs to be completed before you approve something which is not yet totally fixed.
So all we can do tonight is really say, maybe there's a consensus that this looks good, keep going.
Well, yeah, I think you said that last time.
Yeah,
You said
we
it.
did say that.
So I think you've already been there. that
I
you've got-
apologize, I was not there because of noise.
I think you've already kind of given it a voice approval, but that voice approval is still subject to coming up with this completed memorandum of understanding that everybody agrees to. So, I understand why Gas City wants to move ahead. I have great sympathy for them in that. But for $2.5 million, I just think we want to get it right before we do it. And we're not there yet. You know, I don't know why we couldn't be there easily by next month. I'm even suggesting they can go commissioners first before they come here, get it approved there, and then when it comes to us, it would then be approved. But I want comment back from all the parties involved toward the proposed memorandum.
Yeah, I would just like to reiterate, we wasn't intentionally delaying anything, just the parties hadn't responded back. I know it took a while for the counties, is it Jim Higgins?
Consultant, yeah.
To consult.
It took a while to get that response.
Took a long time to respond, and, I think that we want to be able to look at, a memorandum and be able to feel good about it before we sign it. So I don't think there's anything to do this evening.
Well, I appreciate the work you're putting into it. As I understand it, the city has been looking at other facilities and ways to draw the cost of this project down, potentially even more. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, our goal is that with the $2.5 million pledge, if you will, is not necessary. We've got a $17 million bond that was approved. We've made a bond payment in January this year. So we're actively expending funds on this project, and we're probably 10 to 15% complete with the overall project. Site work's complete. We've got a building ready to go, but the escalation of costs due to the pandemic just made this project over budget. We're certainly grateful for the county's willingness to consider a $2.5 million contribution. We're working with the Ready grant, and we're looking at ways to reduce construction cost of the project to get it inside of what is both acceptable to all users, including the county and the Gas City area.
But we don't get the opportunity to get involved in a project, and I'm kind of excited just from this body. I mean, we deal with the tax rates, the financial side of things, and rarely do we get the opportunity to be this directly involved in something, and that does excite me because I think there is a community benefit to this. From the schools, from concerts, from other county, as I understand, there's the potential that maybe the Convention Visitors Bureau may be going in there. The emergency readiness. I mean, it is going to be a project that's going to benefit the entire county. It really is, and that does excite me to be a small part of that, because like I said, we don't normally get the opportunity to do that. But I agree with Mr. Stephenson. We need to have everything right before we commit to this. But it is a project that excites me. So I appreciate everything you've been putting into it.
Yeah, I think once the mayor returns from vacation, we'll again try to get a meeting set up to where the council and commissioners and the city and the legal team can work out some of these details. And again, I'll be glad to answer any other questions or comments that anybody has. If not, I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just again, as follow-up on that issue, the commissioners have agreed to sign the MOU once the agreement is acceptable by all parties. And I don't know, I was trying to check my drafts or if I sent it to Phil, but that was the one question that we were waiting on, is who will be the actual holding entity that should be a part of that MOU. Once we have that designated, commissioners already have given me the go-ahead to sign that MOU. So that's where we are on the MOU.
Yeah, I think it's okay to say that probably by the next meeting, we should have a final draft for that. Thank you. Do you want to talk about the Stanley security?
One more issue for me, and aren't you glad it's not budget meetings that we're going through right now? You'd be here till 10 or 11 o'clock, right?
Moving faster with the budget.
The issue that we brought up last fall that we've been wrestling with is the Stanley's warranty. This is something that we have been wrestling with. We've just recently found out that some of the proprietary information, we have to make sure that we buy into that, or we cannot access the particular equipment we have. And I'll let Marcus explain that a little bit more, but we are going to recommend that we move forward with a relationship with Stanley Security. So if Marcus, you don't mind stepping up there and reviewing the contract.
Hello again, gentlemen. I know last year you guys wanted me to look into the possibility of us and IT taking over the camera system because I think there was understanding like this cost was primarily just camera based. And after talking with the vendor and things like that, looking over the agreement, it's more than just cameras. It's basically, let's see if I can pull it up so I can read it here. Yeah, so basically it's for their touch screen control systems, for their door control system, the intercom systems, the video system, so that's your camera piece right there, access control interface, duress watchtower system, utility control interface, that's the lighting and receptacle contractors controlled by the security system. It's got a security management system, I believe that's kind of tied in with the access control and the cameras. And then there's also another software piece for the PLC, intercom, informer, Genetec video software, and backups. Each proposal because I have two different agreements. There's one that the Sheriff's Department that they were really adamant for, which was the original, was the 24/7, 365 plan. So that's basically where they could be, Stanley could be contacted either on a weekend or, late at night, and it doesn't cost the county any additional, but you're paying a higher fee per month. So the fee for that per month was $4,480 for that, and that consisted of the support for all those electronics I just listed off, and then $1,237 of that is just the maintenance and stuff like that for the actual cameras and the video system. So that way, because it constantly gets updates and firmware and stuff like that. It's my understanding that currently, I think it's the end of the week. If we don't make a decision, basically that second piece with the Genetec video management system software, basically it'll stop getting updates. Now it's not too big of a deal in the beginning. It's just one of those things later down the road. If you put it off so long and you buy a camera, because usually there's newer cameras and sometimes those have newer firmware on it than what the system does. So then in order to get that new camera to work, you have to basically upgrade the system, and then you basically have to back pay like all those months that you didn't pay to get caught up on all the updates and stuff.
Ransomware?
Ransomware? No.
They're going to hold us hostage unless we pay it?
Well, the system will work. The system will work, it's just you won't be able to add like a newer camera. I mean, you could still go out and buy like an older camera potentially, and the firmware, as long as it's matches, I mean, you can add it in.
And how much was it?
So,
It's 53,760.
yeah, for the year, and it's
3 years.
3 years, so you take that 50
So,
times 3.
you know, before we talked about the scope of the project was like 100 and, I forget how much, a little over 100,000. And, you know, thought that maybe you could do the cameras, and I actually, you know, through Marcus and kind of, you know, investigated this and why I don't like it, because I don't like those reoccurring fees every month.
Yeah.
And I don't like the fact that they didn't come through, you know, IT to begin with. So, you know, we're kind of back, you know,
Yeah, this
playing, you know, the backside of this.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those that we're gonna have to do to stay up, at least for this year.
Yeah,
And
well,
probably gonna have to, you know, do you investigate, you know, IT staff, you know, trying to figure out how to do some of that stuff, or do you just continue paying the monthly fee?
Yeah, I mean, because the camera system and stuff like that, I mean, that's something we could definitely figure out over time. But as far as everything else goes, with like the door controls and things like that, I have no clue where to even begin with that. But like I said, I spoke with the Stanley, and he said they had another agreement that was pretty similar, and that was the business hour plan. So I don't know if you want to talk about that one.
Yeah, so I mean, the business hour plan would be that they would only service it during business hours, and they would be, you know, available 24/7, 365. It does save about $9,000. You know, I don't know what their hourly rate is outside of, you know, the non-business hours, or what that, you know, it could equate to, but it seems like, you know, Marcus's recommendation would be to do the 365 to 24/7.
How many times have you actually called them out where you had to have them right there?
Well, you see, the thing is, right now, the sheriff's department has worked with them directly. Pretty much the only time we've had to work with them was, you know, towards the end of the project, when they actually put the system in, they needed internet access. So that was the one time, and then there's been 2 other times where one of the camera monitoring stations just failed, so we just put in a new computer and we installed the camera viewer software on it. So I had to go to them to get the information to set all that up, so that way they could be able to view cameras and stuff like that and then process it.
So in this contract, can we just sign up for 1 year, or are they gonna force us to do more?
It's a 3-year contract.
Yeah, it's a 3-year deal.
I don't know, did Nikki say that he would do less, or?
Oh, what was that?
Did they say that it would do less? Was that question asked? Would they do 1 year?
I mean, I never got back a reply from him on that.
Yeah.
Basically, I just got the, because you sent me the business hour agreement, and that's the thing he sent me, basically.
I don't recall for sure, but I believe it was either a 3 or a 5-year contract that was offered to us.
How much they charge an hour?
$105 an hour, minimum of 4 hours.
Yeah.
So do they charge extra after 5 or 4?
I asked hourly rate. I'm thinking it was going to be around 100.5. He said 165. He didn't say anything about after hours or holidays. I just add something. One, we did right before we submitted this proposal to the commissioners, we did have a server go out. He did work after hours. He actually drove up on a Friday. He was able to salvage the server. That server is very critical. I can tell you this system has probably saved us for, I know, at least 1 lawsuit, and maybe on the second one. Having the 24/7 service for what we do, we never close. I mean, valuable. I know it's expensive. I don't like it. You know, I pay taxes too. I know you guys don't like it, but I mean,
Yeah, and I mean, maybe it could be one of those things where, you know, we go with one of these agreements for, you know, 3 years, and then, you know, during that time, you know, I mean, maybe we could look into alternatives that would, you know.
At $150 an hour gives us 353 hours to work with. We're gonna make that $53,000. Gives us 353 hours in that year's time.
Right.
So some of that's equipment replacement, correct?
Yes. That's my understanding, yes. Captain Fleet, does that include the hardware piece, just to clarify?
Yes.
You're cutting out, cutting in and out. Can you hear us?
I can't hear him.
Yeah, I can't hear.
This reads, the way it reads here says, this includes the parts and labor that is involved in normal wear and tear, repairing or replacement during normal business hours. Well, that's the normal, wonderful one. It says, this includes the parts and labor that is involved in normal wear and tear, repairing or replacement 24 hours a day, 365. Repair, replacement.
There are certain exclusions.
Repair equipment or repair or replacement equipment damaged by the customer, acts of God, or vandalism is not covered. Yeah. I guess they expect insurance to cover it. Acts of God, I don't know.
I really, again, I don't like it, but I don't think we have a choice at this point.
Our choice is we can enter into an hourly agreement.
Well, you could do you still gotta pay.
Yeah, so no matter what, so if you guys decide not to go with, you know, like one of the agreements, I mean, you're gonna have to at least renew the
Genetech.
the Genetech, $1,237 per month, which I think, I think it's like $14,844 for that piece, for that camera system. So that way it can continue to get updates and add cameras and so forth.
Right, hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Just prior to meeting this to the commission, we did have that server go out, and we had to pay for it. Sheriff actually paid for it. It was $24,000, and that was for just to get that up and running, that other piece of equipment. So I mean, these things can get expensive real quick. So again, like I said, reality of it is, I think probably the best bet that we move forward with the 24/7 coverage.
So there was no warranty with the product. And
That was my understanding, because I mean, with a lot of this stuff, that's typically something that's done, you know, right when you're inquiring or about ready to purchase the product. So, Captain Fleece, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, was that something that Stanley dropped the ball on with that stuff, or with regarding?
Yeah, someone did, and I tell you, they're kind of making it up on the back end. It seems like we were supposed to have all this stuff expire in October, and they've been keeping it going, but we're at the road. I mean, we got 5 months of coverage for free right now until we, giving you gentlemen a chance to decide on what we're going to do. But I think they're at a point where they're not going to do it by Friday.
We're not giving you much incentive to do the other things like you were talking about, Mike. I mean, if you do the hourly wage or you do the business hours, your savings really just isn't enough to add up, because you're going to get yourself stuck and then you're going to pay more money. I mean, $9,000.
Yeah, the only thing I thought with the business hours was, okay, you make IT the lead. Anytime there's something happens, call IT, and if it's after hours, is anything really an emergency? But I guess they'll let the IT to decide that. But when you're only talking 9,000, is it worth that? And then how much time could you get in that?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, if he's saying that you lose video and then you end up with a lawsuit and then you pay them to come in extra money at $9,000, it's gonna go pretty fast.
Yeah.
I say pay the least amount we can get out of it.
That's what I would agree, but what is that gonna be?
Yeah, I don't know what that's gonna be.
You're gonna be locked for 3 years, which.
I mean, it's probably a contract we never should have entered into with, I mean, if we'd known this information then, which we probably did, I'm sure it wasn't disclosed, but it's a bad contract and we're being, I mean, they're holding all this over us to get $150,000. I mean, the maintenance and repair of it is costing more than actually the entire system cost. You know, and the language worries me because, I mean, we may think that it's their part, but if they come back and say, no, it's your guys' user error,
Well, if it's vandalism or acts of God, that'd be something we would.
But then it said if it's something that is user.
Damaged by the customer.
Yeah.
Acts of God or vandalism.
So if they determine that, no, this isn't our issue, you guys damaged it, we're gonna pay it on that end too. You know, so there's very little protection on our end.
I do think that the contract says 60-day written notice to get out.
That is true.
So I don't this part.
Does that mean the 3 year, you can do the 3 years? Or can you get out year one, send the 60-day notice?
Ask your attorney, but I think if you sign 60 days notice, you're out.
Yeah, there's also a thing in there saying if they, if their rates and stuff like that increase more than 9%, you also get an out as well. That's in there too.
It's not what I have.
Oh.
Can I suggest that we have Phil review the contract and advise us what's the earliest we can get out?
I think, the commissioners would be responsible for the contract.
I didn't say they only had until Friday then?
Then, Mark, I would suggest you have Kyle review that to answer that question, because if it's a bad contract, let's find out what our rights are and get out as early as we can and as cheap as we can. How's that sound?
Well, the part of the problem is when you get out, what are you gonna do to get?
You gotta go do something, you gotta have something to go
You gotta
to.
put a new system in.
I think you gotta. I think that we need at least a year to determine what we can do. That's the sad part of it.
Well, you might want to give them notice now.
I think because right now, it looks like you pay per month. So basically, I think you get locked into 3 years. It's almost like almost like a phone payment kind of, where, like if you buy a phone and a plan,
Mickey said pay however you wanted to decide. If you wanted to do it monthly, quarterly, or a yearly fee, that would be totally up to you guys how you decide to do it. It was flexible in the payments.
I've been down this contract road and other, for clients, and it's all determined by the written agreement. I would say we, ask Kyle to look at the contract, tell us the earliest we can get out. And like I started to say, if we can't get out for a year, then let's give them notice now that in a year we're done, if that's possible. It's all driven by the written agreement. And we don't know what that is without having an attorney review it.
And that'll give us time to figure out our own system of what we want to do internally.
Well, I think we need to at least,
3 years, right?
Marcus, we need to at least approve the Gentech software piece to continue to get those updates. Is that correct?
yes.
No matter what we do?
Yeah, that's the one piece we have to do no matter what right now. And then, I mean,
So is that annual cost on top of the $53,000? Gentech piece?
No, I mean, the Gentech is part of that 50.
Which is there a contract separate for it? I never seen a contract for it.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if they work with Genetech, if they're like a partner with them. Because I was talking to Mickey, I was like, well, do we go anywhere for that? He's like, no, you would go through us. Because I think they're like an authorized reseller or something like that.
Yeah, this 24/7, 365 option that was talked about. That includes, it says here, the Genetech SMA standard maintenance agreement, a software maintenance agreement for the system. So that fee is included in that 40/40, according to what it reads here.
So who makes the decision before Friday? If we have Kyle look at that contract.
I mean, could we approve it pending the contract?
Approve the Genetech or whatever it's called.
That's the bare minimum. Why don't we do that? I'd make that motion.
I'll second that.
So the motion is, have a motion from.
Wait a minute, though. Before you, if you make this one, when's the rest of the contract go forward? Right?
Well, the thing is, I mean, currently right now, I don't, Captain Fleece, is that, the equipment's not it's not under, a warranty or anything right now, right? Or
Warranty actually expired, according to this, July 31st of 20.
yeah, it was a while ago.
Because some parts of this got installed quicker than others, and I put in the hardware first, all the infrastructure, and I'm kind of wrong on the technical terms, but the cameras was the last part of this that got activated. So the cameras will probably be, they will be in the last fire. All the major stuff first, the brains up, and then that's dedicated 1,000.
I have a motion and I have a second. We're still trying to determine what the motion is. Mr. Connor was requesting the bare minimum of the Genetech, pending the contract, being able to get out of it at a reasonable time, correct?
Yes.
I'm wondering if you don't approve, the 53,000 pending to be able to get out of it. But the bare minimum is fine.
What is that amount per month?
The Genetech video management software maintenance, is that what you're talking
The
about?
software maintenance agreement, whatever you're calling the minimum.
Yeah, so that way the system can continue to get updates and things like that. It was $1,237 a month.
So if we only do this and we have a piece of equipment go down, we're gonna buy it.
Pretty much, yeah.
I have a question, Marcus. And
Mr. Fleece?
I'd like to know the original contract that Mickey gave us in August that was submitted to the commissioner's office. It had several plans on here, and the cheapest with the tech software estimate was $2,265 a month. That was of the, let's see, the 1, 2, 3, 4. There were 5 plans that was at the commissioners given. I think you guys might have gotten that. I just want to be clear on this because when we presented options,
Yeah, Captain Fleece, you're cutting out again.
Sounds like to me you gotta do the 50-some thousand.
Yeah, I think.
Lose one piece of equipment.
Yeah, I think you do the 53,760.
You have to.
Do that and then make sure we can get out of the contract. Because we have no backup plan,
Right,
that's the
we
thing.
don't have no warranty, so if one piece goes down, we can be paying more than
But I don't know that we can do just a 1 year.
that.
What he's saying is if you do that, maybe you can get out of the
Get out
contract.
of the
Certain
way.
things happen
Yeah,
before.
maybe 9%.
After one year. You don't know that.
Yeah, we don't know that.
You don't know
Yeah.
that.
So we may be stuck with it for 3 years if it doesn't.
And based on the system, you may need to be stuck for 3 years now, unless you're gonna replace the system, maybe, I don't know. Sounds like, it,
Are you,
unfortunately.
I mean, there's only a couple options, either IT is gonna learn the system and be able to troubleshoot the system, including access control, or you're gonna switch companies. I don't think you're gonna do any of that within 6 months, probably a year.
And so maybe you'll feel like you can be able to get out of it after a year if you want to, but maybe not.
We don't have no warranty, right? So
Well, this
five
one-
pieces of paper go bad, you gotta use another time.
What do we do to get this done to not be?
We just passed the 53,000.
We tell them that we gave them 53,000 for 1 year. Take it or not. So we're willing to do it. I don't know.
I'll withdraw my motion if somebody wants to make that one.
Do you want to withdraw your second?
I'll withdraw my second.
Okay. You want to make the
So
motion?
moved.
Okay.
So move to pay them
53,760 for 1 year.
for 1 year.
Okay, have a motion from Mr. Connor, a second from Mr. Scott to agree to the 53,760 for Stanley security equipment. Any other questions or comments?
Well, what if, no.
Chuck.
Now, just one second here. They say 3 to 5 years, but we're gonna throw this 53,000 at them. What if they come Friday and just go, nah, we'll just shut it off?
Well, who does that?
These people here, you said we had till Friday, right?
It won't shut off, the system will continue to
get
operate.
Well, I'm sure if you
Yeah.
guys approve this and you tell them, hey, we're gonna do this for a year, they're gonna keep you service. So
Yeah,
they want their $53,000.
I'd want the 150 if I was
Well,
them.
I know, but they want the
got us in
53.
the-
I'm sure they want the 50.
I'd want the 150 the way they got us trapped.
Yeah, any other questions or comments? Public input?
Have a bill every month, they'll pay it up front.
I have a question, comment.
Yes, Mr. Bursley.
Initially, when we brought this to you, I believe we were going to ask for that money. I think the original ask was for the money to come out of the Hume Capital Development. So technically, we don't have the money outright. I mean, we could contractually start, the monthly cycle to take care of that. Just wanting you to be aware that we can't just sign the contract and write a check because we don't have that technically appropriated.
Did we ever appropriate? We would have to advertise an additional appropriation for the 53.
Well, I have a question for Mark first, and I don't know that fund's status as far as unappropriated balance right now, but Angie may have that, okay, because I mean, you gotta make sure you have enough unappropriated balance to accommodate that. I don't know if you do. Angie's gonna look, she may have it here.
That's where we initially had decided that would be the place to take it from. So I don't want that to be a kink. I think that we're headed in the right direction. I just need to know where we're going to pay for it.
Hey, you're close. According to now this is up to date now, right? This shows an unappropriated balance of $69,264 in the CCD fund.
And we just drew 22 out of there.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So you're at down to $47,264. I'm gonna suggest to you, because of that difference, you're gonna talk about general funds where you need to do it. But that's up to you.
That's probably as easy as anything.
I think so.
You're pretty close on CCD. But, I mean, that's up to you.
Oh, pending the advertising it, right? For
Well,
additional.
you can, obviously, you're not gonna be writing a check today.
Yeah.
You're gonna notify, hey, we're signing on this, we're gonna give you a 1 year, 12-month agreement, so much per month. Bill us monthly. And I'd say the commissioners ought to look at their budget accounts. And between now and the March meeting, you determine, do you have it available in your appropriations now to transfer or have it available, or you ask for an additional? If you need an additional, you have to advertise it and get it approved.
Okay, we're all clear on the motion? Okay, public comment? Roll call, please.
Mr. Scott? Aye. Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Rohrbach?
No.
Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Poling,
Yes.
Mr. Lemon,
Aye.
Mr. Middlesworth.
Yes.
Okay, that's 6-1. So I guess they could notify the company we've agreed to that, but then the commissioner needs to work with you guys as far as getting an appropriation established.
And pending, make sure that the termination is there. I mean,
So your approval, I guess that needs to be clarified. Your approval of that motion was pending legal review, you're saying?
is that what we talked about or not?
I just thought you signed on for a
We did
year.
it one time.
I just thought you signed on for a year and then you're hoping to do what you can to get out of it at some point.
That was my intent, that we'll at least sign on for that much longer,
I guess.
get legal opinion from Kyle.
Okay, we'll clear on that.
What's the earliest we can get out after we take
So
that
you
step?
agreed to 1 year at this
1 year.
point, but then you're gonna be reviewing and see what you can do down the road.
Get us out, legal team, as quick as you can.
Well, you better tell Marcus to get, get sharpened up on those skills too. I think that's all you have, Harley.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Reports. Last meeting, we went over committee assignments, and Mr. Lemming is requesting to not be appointed to the Area Plan Commission. So I was wondering if there's any members that would like to serve as the council's appointment to the Area Plan Commission. According to.
When do they meet?
They meet.
Monday night, first Monday of every month at 7 p.m.
And this appointment has to be one member appointed by the county council from its membership, so.
I can do it. Frank can do it.
Frank, you,
Frank will do it.
Yeah.
so I guess.
Step up, Frank.
You're the man, Frank.
So Frank, you're taking over the Area Plan Commission. Is there any other corrections, or is everybody okay with their committee assignments?
So, should be there's count. Okay. Yeah.
I think that's all I have. Next meeting date, the regular meeting is Wednesday, March the 16th. Meeting adjourned.
So we're all going to focus now.
You buying? I'll follow you.
The next council meeting. You won't have to sweat it. I have to watch on it.
First time I was texting.
You don't need Yeah, he's already getting this off.
All they decided to do it themselves.
Right.
That's what they did. So I think it is probably.
I only look.
Is you can come in here.
No, I would suggest that before I sell it.
Yeah, there's like, and that's where it does.
I'll be shot. That's what we got.
I don't know.
Yeah, ours is not.